Throws in the flat. Pass is complete to Clayton. First down and then some. Goodbye, Mark Clayton. To the 10, to the 5. Touchdown, Oklahoma. Incredible.
This is 365 Sports.
Motion by Oliver. Lucky will go the other way on the option. Pulls it down. Touchdown, Aggies.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
McNabb, straight back. Left side, he's all alone. It's a touchdown. Conrad. A defensive breakdown, and Conrad was all alone. He goes into the end zone for the second touchdown. Nobody was over there.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Maurice Clarett is the tailback, or the single back. He's got it. He's got a touchdown.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Hello, end zone. Won't catch it. LaMichael James, and ladies and gentlemen, right now, this young man is a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on a Tuesday afternoon as the month of April has evaporated. Just a couple of days left. May 1st is on Thursday. And I'm David Smoak with Craig Smoak to my right, Paul Catalina to my left. And we appreciate your time today with 365 Sports. If you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already subscribed, please do. And if you know somebody else you could share us, our story with, please do. And also hit the like button. We would appreciate that. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak with me. And so Baylor is a school that obviously had a nice run at the end of the year until they ran into LSU in the bowl game down in Houston. And they just didn't have any answer for Nussmeier with the defense. So they have spent most of when everyone else has been adding portal players. They've had a couple here and there. Here was Dave Aranda following the last practice of their spring workouts on Saturday.
This particular transfer window has been primarily defense for us, and it hasn't been intentional. You know, we haven't come out trying to play defense. We very much wanted to be offensively minded in our approach, but it was one thing after the other. And so now that we're on the other side of that gives us the ability to play a little bit more offense. You'd rather play offense than defense.
All right, if you're not paying attention, he's not talking about like X's and O's on either side of the football. It's about they were having to be defensive like a lot of teams. We've heard coaches discuss this when it comes to keeping their players in the system, on the roster, as they were being contacted by others. That's part of college football today. And I think Brendan Bett was one that the big defensive lineman that left last week. But what he meant by offense now is now that the portal window closed on, late Friday, they now have tried to get aggressive in adding a few people. And both of them, the early names, are both a defensive tackle from Tulane, the cornerback Williford from Tennessee Tech, added late yesterday, Caldwell Williford. I had somebody describe him as, and I'm not saying this is who he is, but describe, he's undersized. If you look at his size, 5'9", like 170, runs like a bullet. But he plays cornerback the way Davion Mitchell played defense in basketball, that he's just very physical despite his size, and he has committed to Baylor. There are other commitments for college football teams that we will get to here in this opening segment.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that it works out. And look, they did a pretty good job overall. I mean, look, I'm just going through counting. 1, 2, one of them that the winner brought back anyway, but 3, 4, like so. Like 6 guys left overall, and some of them wouldn't have been in roles for Baylor anyway. They only lost a couple guys that you would say they were counting on. So they did get a good job of retaining the roster here. I'm curious to see how, not only for Baylor, but for everybody else who goes, the last remaining pieces of the spring portal window. I mean, there's not been any, like, outside of Nico, like, earth-shattering moves. Just ones that are maybe more like, okay, that's interesting, but they have done a good job of protecting their roster for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Texas Tech's got a lot of the attention this offseason, so, they've been out there and really, promoting the additions they've made. I think Baylor's probably done that a little less so, but they're a top 15 transfer portal class for whatever you take that as, those types of rankings. I mean, I feel like it's, a very inexact science, but for what it's worth, they are the 15th, I guess, transfer portal index class that I saw on On3 earlier today. So they're in the mix with schools like Texas and Texas A&M and K-State and SMU and others in that same vicinity. So, yeah, I mean, they've seemingly done a pretty good job. I think losing Brendan Bett was a pretty significant loss because of the role he was expected to play. But obviously he had other ideas and other conversations that were ongoing. And I don't care if his parents get mad at me saying that. I don't care. He went straight to Florida and acted like it was all just happening out of nowhere. But that's not me complaining. That's just every portal story. I just don't like. It's like Nico's father. Like, just say what's going on. Like, we're not all stupid. So despite having their own little issue along those lines, that I guess you really couldn't have done too much about. They've held on to pretty much everybody you thought would be a possibility. Even when Tennessee's quarterback situation came up, they were able to hold on to Sawyer Robertson. I know that there were several Big 12 quarterbacks that could have been called or were called. Certainly he would be near the top of the list if I had to guess. So that was an important piece. Some of those young guys that they were really flaunting a year or two ago kept them. Caden Jenkins has to have a much better year, but a year ago you were wondering if you were going to lose him, and now that really wasn't much of a question, probably in part because he didn't play nearly as well, and also in part because you've got your NIL in order. So yeah, I mean, that's great for them to keep picking up guys. I don't know how much the impacts will be felt from the spring transfer guys, because again, that's more slim pickings for the most part outside of a Nico or someone like that jumping in. But yeah, they've managed to do pretty well, and they're amongst the top classes in the Big 12.
All right, so we know that there depends on which site, but pretty much everybody across the board, whether it's theathletic.com or ESPN or On3 or whoever else, with Texas Tech as the number one portal recruiting class, and in some cases they have separated, and they got another name. Roy Alexander from Incarnate Word. Remember, that's where Cam Ward started. Eric Morris was the coach at the time. So Roy Alexander, huge numbers, over 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, and he has committed to play at Texas Tech. And again, the portal is closed, but the movement is not. You can still do what you want to do between now and the first time that you have to be on a campus to be able to enroll at a particular school. So Roy Alexander has given his commitment to play at Texas Tech.
This, of course, Incarnate Word, because of Cam Ward, is not going to be one of those schools that you're like, all right, do these guys might know what they're doing a little bit. He has a ton of production, 13 touchdowns, 1,100 yards, stays in Texas. He's from Florida. And I think, I saw a lot of like all of the, 24/7 or on 3 sites from schools in Florida. As soon as he got in, like, oh, this would be an intriguing ad for, to bring him back to his home state, like whether it's USF, UCF, Miami, like everybody, did that. And then here comes Texas Tech in. And look, they added back Micah Hudson this week, and we'll see how that goes. But this is a guy who, unlike Micah Hudson, has some production, albeit at a lower level. And I think he fits in well with what they want to do on offense. And coming from Incarnate Word, you're used to running a ton of routes. So I think this is intriguing, at least. These are the ones I like in the transfer portal, the guys at a UIW who get a chance at a Tech or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, good for him. A great opportunity to jump up a level and prove himself at a Power 4 school and play a much tougher schedule. I mean, I know they played South Dakota State a couple times there at Incarnate Word, got drilled. That was probably the best team that they played, and most teams get drilled by South Dakota State. I think they also played Villanova, and that was the extent of their strength of schedule. So needless to say, they'll be playing a few better defenses, but he'll also have better players around him and a lot more at his disposal. Coaching, facilities, all of that. So, yeah, Tech just keeps padding that number 1 transfer portal class. And I think at this point they could add 20 more guys or add nobody else, and the story is going to be the same. It's like, all right, what does it look like in September through November? And I'm excited to see what that does look like, because I don't think there's a more hyped up offseason in America than the one that we've seen coming out of Lubbock. So they are ready for the challenge. They are leaning into the challenge, and they've certainly added, as much as they possibly can to what was already a pretty good base. So I just find it funny that Joey McGuire said initially, like, yeah, we're going to go get like 15 guys. And it's like every single week there's just more and more and more. And I know that comes down to, well, guys are showing interest, so we're going to reciprocate interest. So I'm not saying it's anything negative, but it's just funny that like the initial plan was, hey, we're going to get like 15 guys. And now you're like 25 guys or whatever. It just blew right past that prediction of his. Let me see, 21 guys. And I don't remember what he said initially, but it was like 10, 15. So they've continued to find value in Cash Cleveland and Roy Alexander
David
and
Bailey.
Micah Hudson coming back. And so, yeah, you keep adding talent if you can add talent. And, that's another big get on paper for the Red Raiders.
Get it. If they want to be on your campus and you can get them there, then do it. So Texas Tech, the top 10, this was Max Olson.
I actually, to finish up on Texas Tech, I wondered about their receiving core, because you lose a guy like a Josh Kelly and you lose your big tight end. And Coy Eakin's coming back, but I did feel like they had a little bit of a question mark there with some of those guys departing. Not major questions, but now they've pretty successfully addressed, I think, just about everything at this point.
Craig Halbert, also of ESPN, had put out, it was like about 8 to 10 hours ago, listing along with others who were on staff with Tech at 1, without getting into the numbers, LSU, Oregon, Ole Miss, Miami, they've had a really good spring too, Missouri, Auburn, Nebraska, Florida State, Paul, and Texas A&M. Those are 10 that he listed having at least up until now. That doesn't mean others like Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State or Texas haven't had success. It's just the numbers overall. You get what you can. When you have the big recruiting classes, then you don't need most of the time, unless there's a coaching change, 8, 10, 12, or 15 players. Just getting specific needs is what some of those schools have done pretty well.
Well, and there's been teams that are far more active. I mean, Ole Miss is basically – I wonder actually if Texas Tech is going to apply the Ole Miss logic every year, where this isn't a, hey, we're really revved up because we've got this quarterback and we've got this guy and that guy and we've got these sets of coordinators that we've just brought in that probably aren't going to be here for like 5 years because they're going to go be head coaches somewhere else. So, like, we've got this window of time, right? So is this going to be – I'm curious – like we really notch it up when we need to, or is this going to be Ole Miss in the Big 12, where every year it's like 30 out, 40 in? If you look at Ole Miss,
it won't be 30. It won't be 30. You're talking about what, like 15 or 20, 25? Is that what Ole Miss does? Really?
Ole Miss 30 transfers in.
Wow. Damn. Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, 28 transfers out. Texas Tech 21 transfers in. So Ole Miss has 9 more incoming players, and they have 3 less outgoing players. I mean, so Tech has 10 more guys that left that they haven't brought in, and I don't know how all that works with their numbers or whatever, but I think it's notable if you look at the on-3 rankings. The transfer out average of the players was like 63.23 for Tech in particular, and the incoming average is 82.19. So that's pretty significant that you're bringing in a higher level of player, and on average a much higher level of player. I mean, you're talking about the difference between like a 3 and a 4-star across the board. So I think that's notable, and that's what you're trying to do. I mean, I think all of those top teams, all of them have better averages of the players coming in, because that's the whole goal, right, is to shed the players who maybe aren't contributing and bring in better players. And I think you look at Tech's numbers, and they've certainly done that. But, yeah, I mean, Ole Miss is right there behind them. And so I just wonder if this is going to be like an every year, you bring in 30 guys, or I don't know. But that's what Ole Miss has applied as far as their strategy these last couple of seasons. And it's still TBD for Lane Kiffin and company. But, yeah, it's a very impressive class that the Red Raiders have brought in.
Of the 10 I mentioned in the transfer portal, if you look at what is the high school rankings, of course, so we just had the signing day back in February, and even then back in December. Of the schools I mentioned that are among the top 10 when it comes to the transfer portal, the ones in the top 10 for high school recruiting, top 10, Oregon is 3. Auburn, I mentioned them, they're at 6. And LSU, I mentioned them in the transfer portal, they are at 8. And A&M, I mentioned them at 10, they are at 9. Kim Coulter, Texas Tech, has a top 12 recruiting class right now. And Kim, thank you very much for the super chat. So there's a little bit of this and that. Meanwhile, Boise State, Ashton Genty's on his way out. They also have now retained their head coach, Spencer Danielson, with a contract extension of just over $2 million a year, a 5-year deal after their playoff run. And so Spencer Danielson, who's been a guest on this show, is now locked in, at least with this contract, for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and $2.2 million for a coach is that's bargain basement now. And of course in the Mountain West it's one of the higher, and then he'll be in the Pac-12 in a year. But yeah, I'm happy. He really he really appears comfortable and there. They've had coaches that have stayed for a long time in the past. They've always made it very comfortable for their coaches in every era. So I hope he stays for a good long while there. I think he's a nice fit for Boise State.
Well, he should be comfortable. He's been there since 2017 as far as a coach on staff. And so, yeah, he's definitely very familiar with Boise Blue and all that comes with that. And so, yeah, he slid in nicely when they needed to make a change after Andy Avalos. And then last year, obviously, an all-timer of a season for them. And having Ashton Genty just give them millions upon millions of marketing dollars and TV time and just spotlight. I don't know what life holds for the Broncos post Ashton Genty, but he certainly left them better than he found them, and Spencer Danielson's done a nice job. So, yeah, after going and making the playoff and having the runner-up for the Heisman, I'd assume a contract extension or contract reworking, additions, bonuses, whatever would be in order. So, yeah, not surprised to see that, and good for him. But, yeah, it's not that flashy money that you see in a lot of these coaching stories that we do. So it's pretty modest, actually, just seeing $2.2 million on the screen. He might be a situation where last year would have been an example of, is a star player making more than the head coach? And I don't know if Ashton Genty had come back this year. I'd say absolutely he would have been. I don't know if he was last year, though, considering this is a bump for Spencer Danielson. Yeah. But if he had come back, that would have definitely been the case, I would think.
Yeah, I remember I asked that about eventually will players in any particular – and Genty would have been one of those unique situations making more had he stayed another year. Maybe he was even at some point last year. Who knows? John Wilner with this story. The Pac-12 has a media deal with the CW. ESPN, CBS, and starting to maybe look not only for this year on how they can be seen, but also the following year when, of course, they also have expansion coming up pretty soon. I reached out to Bob Thompson for a note, but he's quoted in one of the articles that I saw, said, I would assume that the networks that signed up for 25 have sort of first rights of the 2026 and beyond. It'll be interesting to see what the structure of the new deal is. Good for Oregon State, good for Washington State, and we have an Oregon State note about playing Houston here in just a second.
Yeah, they're gonna be able to see them every week pretty easily, so that's great news. And then I would say that this probably looks like that in some form or fashion next year. Maybe somebody drops out, but the CW, Smokey, can you list one active show on the CW that's not Live Golf or ACC football?
Locally, us.
But nationally,
no,
yeah.
I don't. So
So they're doing. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the CW in the next 4 years changes their name because they've been bought by a different company. The strategy's changed a little bit, and they're no longer probably doing the same things that they were when they were the Warner Brothers or whatever they were before UPN, and they all kind of came together in the merger and became the CW. So, but whatever it is, I wouldn't be surprised to see it change.
Well, the CW's really leaned into live sports programming. They're doing pro wrestling, they're doing college football, they're doing all sorts of stuff. So, that's made them a better fit than when people were talking about, being on after Gossip Girls and all of that. They've changed their profile a little bit to be more sports friendly and to allow college football to be more of a natural fit. And obviously, they were doing ACC games last year, right? So they've been doing college football. So I think that Oregon State and Washington State will, have a nice home, and that's got to be reassuring for them. There's nothing that sucks more than not knowing something that's really important, the uncertainty of something like, hey, where are we playing our games? Like, hey, where am I working next week? Like, hey, when's my paycheck coming in? Like all these major questions, and for them, it's kind of all of that in one. Like, where are we on the networks?
How do I watch my favorite team? Yeah, the fans,
Yeah, so this is the home schedules they've got, and you mentioned CBS, CW, ESPN. On the surface, so it's 6 games on either side for these schools, for both Washington State and Oregon State. The Pac-12, meanwhile, still needs another football member. That's been an ongoing saga that I've seen little blips of here and there. Good luck to them in that endeavor. But you've got on the Oregon State side, when they play a Power 5 team, it's a bigger network. So Cal, that's an ESPN game. Washington State, that's a CBS game. Houston, that's an ESPN game. Their other 3, Lafayette, Sam Houston, Wake Forest, 4, Fresno State, that's all CW games. On the Wazoo side, you play Washington, that's a CBS game. You play
the Apple Cup.
That's the Apple Cup. And then your other 5 games are all CW games for Wazoo.
Including Oregon State, which I thought that might have been on a bigger network.
Yeah, they're hosting that game, so that's why it wasn't listed when I was mentioning, the Oregon State side of their home schedule. So that's where it does differ in playing a Power 5. That's a road game. So, yeah, that's the one example on here of, I guess, I guess they're not power, but you know what I'm saying, of where they're playing each other, it's a CW game, but all the other power schools they play are the CBS or ESPN. So, we'll see the dollar signs at the end of this and what the money figures look like. It's better than what they were getting last year, I would imagine. And we'll see, how high they can grow this stack and who they add to fulfill their needs there as far as number of members. But I'm sure it's nice to see this for a lot of people out there that had questions about what the future looked like. I think the disappointing part, though, is you need to see the money figure, and that's not going to probably be a figure that makes you feel too great about the gaps and things like that. But what about beyond this? Because when I was reading the little blurbs out there over the last couple of weeks, all the things that, places that typically talk about the Pac-12, the feeling I got, and maybe I was just reading it wrong because I wasn't diving deep, was that I think there were fans under the impression this was going to be like a 5-year deal or a 3-year deal or a 7-year deal, or, something with some longevity to it. This is a 1-year deal. So beyond that, it's still murky, but it's better to have than to have not.
Well, they can't really. Well, they could. They could do a multi-year deal, but until they know who the team is, it's going to join them to make them relevant. Not relevant. Hit the number they need to hit to be a part of the postseason. Then at least they have this year. Good for them. By the way, that that Oregon State game against the University of Houston is now a game moved to a Friday night. That is part of the new deal with the new Pac-12 Conference and Network. Oregon State, that'll be on Friday, September 26th, 9:30 Central in Corvallis. For Houston, that move shifts a third game to a Friday night, with Houston now set to play 4 weekday regular season games for the first time in almost a decade, the 2016 season.
Yeah, that was out there about a week ago, and I guess is just now getting confirmed. So good to have that all squared away, that will be a Friday game officially. And I saw somebody in the comments of one of the tweets actually point out that you look at Oregon State's schedule, Cal, ESPN, Houston, ESPN, Big 12 ACC school. Who do they have contracts with? ESPN. So those games being on ESPN just makes sense to have that. But yeah, good to see that coming to fruition. I know there's two fan bases that have been through a lot, been played for the fool a lot, in my opinion. But to have some actual something to grasp onto, I think is a great thing for both those fan bases.
I have reached out to the Pac-12 or Pac-2, whatever you want to call them, the conference, and asked for their Commissioner Gould to see if she's available for us to be a part of the show at particular times. We've done that before, but then they had a lot of moving parts without question.
You know, I do have one more thing to say, and it's based off of the fact that, we talked about WWE Raw moving to Netflix months ago, and there's various reports out that their viewership's actually down. Like, not like worldwide on a basis, because obviously you're in more homes, but in terms of moving from cable to Netflix, the whole promotion of it and all that, it's like, this is the future, right? Where do we hear that before, right? Apple TV, it's all streaming, it's the future. And then you realize, like, not yet, it's not. Well, WWE basically tried to do the same thing, even though their other partners are all linear. And so they're massaging where they can the PR, but it's been spreading around that they're not getting quite the viewers they thought moving to Netflix. So I say that to say that for all the talk about the future and all the talk about streaming, and certainly we've had lots of those conversations, cable still matters. It still very much matters. It did 2 years ago when we were talking about all this, because we were talking about where the Big 12 eventually landed with their deal and how they swooped in and basically cut the pack off at the knees and created all of this. But I think it is 2 years later, you look back on it and, where is streaming? Streaming is basically in the same place it was, if not a worse spot, in my opinion, as far as live college football coverage games. It's still better to have the cable outlets, the main names, than it is to be exclusively or majority streaming at this point. And so you wondered if maybe they were onto something. Maybe they were at the forefront of something. And you look, no, they weren't. That still was a bad deal looking back on it 2 years later.
Pro sports leagues have gone more streaming, haven't they? But it hasn't yet worked out for college.
It hasn't, but I mean,
Christmas Day for the NFL and Netflix.
Yeah. I don't think Amazon, it doesn't matter. Like, they could pay twice as much for the NFL and
baseball regional networks.
So it's all weird. It's all jumbled. I would say look, in Netflix right now, they have the most popular CEO in all that space, and Ted Sarandos, but he's come under fire a little bit lately because Netflix's earnings were down like quarter over quarter for the first time in a while, and he won't release the streaming number, the exact numbers and all these things, and just says, no, everything's fine, it's good, this is good. Yeah, just trust us on this. And being attached to linear is still good. I think you have to have your feet in both pools of linear and streaming to really be successful. And until linear goes completely away, streaming is not going to be the answer. So as long as there's linear options and cable options, and people are doing that still more in majority than they are all streaming options, until that happens, all streaming is not the way to go.
Yeah, you just wonder, is that ever going to turn the corner? Technology.
The technology is going to determine it. The consumers are going to determine it, and the company is going to decide, okay, well, what can we do? And also it's going to be, what is cheaper to send out to the world? Like, if they can save money by just sending everything to to this one thing, to an app instead of a satellite of all these other things. Maybe it's cheaper. That's what's going to win.
Well, ESPN Plus for me used to be a challenge, and it also not always is the best product. It can be a little bit flaky, but I've gotten to the point where if I can get used to that, and I don't even think of it as streaming, even though that's exactly what it is, and I get to watch it on my phone or my laptop or whatever it might be, but I've gotten a little bit more used to that, and so we'll see. But they have somewhere to put some of their games where you can watch them. That's the good news with the Commissioner Gould and also the Pac-2 with Oregon State and also Washington State. Here is, to me, a funny as hell tweet from Brad Underwood. I've gotten to know him a little bit. I haven't talked to him, and it's been a while. He was at SFA, did a great job. He was there for a cup of coffee at Oklahoma State, then took the Illinois job. Here are some of their commitments and where they're from. And all of them, one of the jokes was, and this is not, but Vic, Sitch. I mean, it's ISIC at the end of every one of those names. Was there the picture of Brad too, Garrett? Did you put that in there?
No.
It shows him in an old, warm-up jacket with the white stripes down the shoulder. He looks like he's in
Chernobyl.
Yeah, and he's got a cigarette. And knowing him, I don't know if he smokes or not, but it was a pretty cool. But that's who they have brought in from the Balkans for University of Illinois men's basketball.
Yeah, Andre Stojakovic was the latest one. And, of course, he's the son of Peja Stojakovic. So he's the one that got the most famous backing there. But, yeah, really interesting. Look, it's different. Illinois is going down this path. But, look, the colleges are really recruiting Europe a whole lot more. Baylor had Dubravcic this last year, and there have been a lot of guys. You're starting to see come through Europe, Australia. Look, if the NBA is going to go there, college needs to go there because not every single one of them is going to be Luka Doncic or Victor Wembanyama and be a first-round draft pick ready to go when they're 19. Some of them are just good players that need college work, and now they can come over and make money. So why wouldn't you?
I one note, by the way, and Craig, I fed you for maybe off the radar if you want to use it or not, is how many of the players are entering the draft. We might have that later at about 4:45 or not, or even the foreign players. But this was a note from Jonathan Giovanni, who does a great job, and you don't have this, Garrett. 106 players entered the NBA draft. 106. That's the lowest since 2015. There was once in 2021 363 college players who entered eligible for the NBA draft. So you would think that to me, the easy answer, would you guys agree, is NIL. You could make more money staying in college than going into the draft unless it's a given.
I mean, you can hold everybody hostage in basketball now. So, yeah, it's not surprising. And then of those 106, at least 40 of them will go back to college after they've run through the process, I would think.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not 40, but like 30 of them probably.
A few.
I think some of that's that their piece of the cake's getting eaten a little bit by Euros.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it, is the better players in some cases are just a lot more players than a few years ago are coming from Europe and elsewhere. So you maybe have a better idea of I'm not going to have a better chance to get drafted. I just think there's probably more information, there's more competition out there in general. But, yeah, the number one driving factor I would put good money on would be NIL. I mean, why is Hunter Dickinson still around? Like some of these guys who feel like they've been around for 5 or 6 years. Why are they still? Because they're not good enough for the NBA to make any money, at least not the money they're making by staying somewhere else for year 5 and 6. So, yeah, that's absolutely the driving reason as to why. And that's, part of when you have like these 5th and 6th year football players that are staying, they might be pretty good players still, but they're not good enough for the NFL. Like that's the big thing is that they're that older, but they're big, like they're maxing out in college. So yeah, I think a lot of guys are saying, hey, I'm going to get my money while I can. I'm going to stick around as long as I can. And, if I somehow still make it to the NBA, great. But the odds aren't as good as me staying at Kansas for a 6th year and making $250,000 or whatever. So yeah, that has the most impact without a doubt.
Well, look, if you're Hunter Dickinson, you're going to get paid 7 figures at Kansas or close to it to stay for another year. Then, he's not going to go to the NBA. He'll get a look. I mean, he'll
so wait
bounce
a minute.
around.
He has a year left?
No. That's last year.
Okay,
So I'm just using it as an example.
God, I was
so you're going to get, you're going to get let's just say he got $1.5 million at Kansas. So he's going to make more than he would in Europe if he'd not, because he would have gone to the NBA, knocked around for a minute. That's what he's going to do this year. At least now he has more money in the bank. And then if he continues to play basketball, he'll be in Europe or the G League or something like that.
Get it while you can. And then, of course, there's guys like Maceo Teague, who's making good money overseas. That used to be something you had to do. It used to, and you could make some good money getting paid overseas.
Hey, I'll tell you this. If I was a college basketball player and you told me, look, you were just below the NBA line, like you're just not there yet. You need to develop. Like, we want to see you really play. And, Olympiakos in Greece wants to pay you $850,000 to be their point guard. I'd be like, I have already bought my swim trunks. I'll be there in a minute.
Yeah, and the other thing, and we've had players who have played in Europe tell us this before, that they also get the amenities. Like, for example, they set them up at a nice place. I don't know about a house, but perhaps a nice condo or something, along with much of what they have when it comes to money to spend to do what they need to do and live their life.
Look, if you told me that Tweety Carter was like a spy because of all the places he's been,
absolutely.
And then when he finally came back here, was like, I'm just tired of the spy life.
Didn't this Wainwright go overseas initially? And
Royce O'Neal did.
Been a part of the NBA.
Yeah.
Shaquille O'Neal, how about this? Will become the general manager at Sacramento State. They're doing a good job at Sac State. Teaming up with Bibby in a 5-star studded role, and Mike Bibby is the coach. So there's a big name. We've seen this now. Oh, my Lord. I know I'm going blank here with some names that have gone to Luck, of course, with Stanford, among others who have done this, who are guys who have made some money. He, of course, is worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, this is similar to Steph Curry's doing this at Davidson.
Yeah, that's the one.
And Trae Young is doing it at Oklahoma. So, well, I mean, they're doing it. It's a volunteer role. They're not paying him any money, but I'm sure it's a nice little side gig for Shaq. His son is playing for Sac State, so I'm sure it'd be great to get a call and be like, "Hey, Shaquille O'Neal, I'd like you to come for Sac State."
You're gonna have to
there's a big reason why he's doing it. His son plays there. I mean, that's a big part of why he's agreeing to do it. But I commend Sacramento State on. I think they're contending with Texas Tech for like off-season headlines of the year. I mean, with Mike Bibby, the hiring, Brennan Marion trying to get into a different conference, like putting out all this like Sacramento State's flush with cash and they're sleeping giant type headlines. And now you have, another one where Shaq's going to be a part of the program in a capacity. You're right, though. This isn't unique to them. There's multiple former star players or current star players who are doing things like this. Max Crosby for the Raiders is doing the same thing for his
Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, Eastern Michigan. So there's a lot of this going on, but it doesn't make it any less cool to have somebody attached. And so Sacramento State's, I don't know who's all in charge and pulling the strings behind the scenes, but I don't know that I even knew they existed prior to this year, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm pretty sure I came across their name. I'm pretty sure I might have said, yeah, there's definitely Sacramento State. But now I know there is, because I've talked about them literally more in the last 5 months than I ever have in my entire multiple decades of existence on this earth prior. So I know that I can confidently say that. So yeah, they're definitely getting a lot of attention for themselves, and we'll see what they can turn it into ultimately. But that's cool for the kids to have a guy like Shaq that'll be involved. And that's a star-studded campus they're creating over there in Sacramento.
They are reaching big. You see programs who are trying, even against what is a hellacious windstorm and not knowing the future of college athletics, and they are going headfirst into a big wave. And good for them for doing that. When we come back, he's the head football coach at TCU, Sonny Dykes. His thoughts about the spring as they've wrapped it up. A couple of other notes we have for him about the Big 12, college athletics, and more. Willie Fritz today at 425 of Houston. This is, and we appreciate your time every day, 365 Sports.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Right now at Bird Collision Ford, we're bringing you an offer that's as big as America. Employee pricing for everyone. You pay what they pay. That means you drive home a new Ford F-150, Bronco Sport, Expedition, Super Duty. From America, for America. Employee pricing for everyone at BK Ford. Looking to sell your vehicle? Get top dollar for yours today. Don't miss out. Employee pricing is available for a limited time. Visit us anytime at bkford.com. Experience better at BK Ford.
I'll never get used to this.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
He is the head football coach at TCU in Fort Worth, and a good friend of the show, Sonny Dykes, joins us on 365 Sports. I'm David Smoak with Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. Hey, how you been? Good to see you. I know you probably didn't check off every box you needed during spring, but how many did you check off, and was it successful?
Yeah, good to see you guys. Thanks for having me, as always. Appreciate it. Yeah, you know what? We had a good spring. We had, every football coach in the country probably feels this way, but we had a very productive 15 practices. Our guys got a lot better. We have a lot of experience coming back. Had a lot of new faces. You know, we had a big group of high school players that graduated early that went through spring ball, and some transfers as well. So a lot of new faces, but a lot of returning guys as well that have a ton of experience, a lot of leadership on this team, a lot of maturity. So really liked the group and felt like we had, really 15 very productive practices.
So, your offense started to really click in last year. Josh Hoover really, found his groove after some early turnover issues. What is it like building off of a season like last year, as opposed to where you had to stop and start a little bit in 2023?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, we had a lot of momentum to end the season. We started playing better. We were sitting there at 3-3. And it was pretty easy to see why we were not playing particularly well and not winning football games. We just kept turning the ball over. And, we had 12 turnovers in a 3-game span, and you're just not going to win in college football if you do that. So, we had an open date, thankfully, before we went and played Utah on the road. And it was a big game for us. And, we sat down, talked to our guys about the importance of not turning the ball over, getting some turnovers defensively, and did a good job to end the season. I think we won 6 of our last 7 games. It got hot. And really learned how to win football games, and had some hard fought ones down the stretch. And the big thing for us is we quit turning it over, as you mentioned. And, I thought Josh really played well down the stretch, settled in, started playing with a lot more confidence. I think, as you said, our offense started to click, and we feel really good about the returning group that we have coming back and our ability to build off of that foundation.
Coach, when it comes to the turnovers and your quarterback there, Josh Hoover, I know some were picks. There were some fumbles as well. Some are not always the quarterback's fault either, but kind of how do you work on turning that down a little bit and protecting the football a little bit more? What are those conversations and the approach like?
Well, it's like anything else. You get what you emphasize as a coach. And so we had to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, look, this is clearly a problem. What can we do to address it and fix it? And so we just started talking about ball security all the time and started, doing everything we could do to make sure that we emphasize that from the very beginning, from the moment we walked on the field to the moment we walked off, and just became a point of emphasis for us. As you said earlier, Josh just started to grow up a little bit. He didn't go through spring ball last year. He was injured. And so, he was still learning. He was still getting those reps. I think the big mentality shift occurred in terms of, we just quit playing desperate. Our defense started to play a little bit better. It all happened together. And as our defense played better, we had to play less desperate on offense. We could, do a better job taking care of the ball. We had a lot of weird things happen. I mean, we had some games where, just some really, really strange things happened as far as turning the ball over. And those things kind of quit happening. And again, a lot of it had to do with what we emphasize. And our guys did a really good job of buying into that, understanding how important it was and following through with that plan.
Did you ever think, and I hope you don't mind me asking this, that other schools have their players come and go, that when somebody else has somebody leave, that all of a sudden you have somebody and a great quarterback, a young quarterback in high demand? And was that in any way any kind of distraction the last week of spring?
What a distraction for us, just because we know what kind of person Josh is and how committed he is to TCU and how much he loves his teammates and loves playing here and being a Horned Frog. And so I think that makes you feel a little bit more at ease. I mean, you still never know. There's a lot of people throwing around a lot of money, and it's hard, for a 20, 21-year-old young man to pass up that kind of life-changing money in some cases. But Josh was all about playing at TCU. He had some opportunities. Some people reached out. There was kind of a high-profile quarterback that moved on, and Josh had an opportunity because of that. And, he elected to stay here, never really considered it. And, I think that's the one thing that we really like that we have going right now at TCU is I think we have a great culture in our program. And, I don't know that our guys are for sale. And so I think these guys enjoy going to school here. They want to be part of this team. We're like everybody else, and we're fortunate. I mean, our players are making money. We're fortunate that when the revenue sharing thing takes place, when that shift occurs, we're going to fund that to the max. And so our players are going to be well compensated. But, that's not the basis of our program. We're not out talking about money with players all the time. That's not the kind of players we recruit. We say it all the time as a program. Recruiting's like fishing. Whatever kind of bait you use, that's the kind of fish you catch. We don't park, fancy cars in our stadium, and we don't have jet airplanes and all that silly stuff. Guys come to TCU because they want to play football. They want to get a great degree. They want to be around good people. They want to play in a good culture. They want to live in Fort Worth, and a city that's growing and provides a lot of opportunities for graduates when they're done playing football. They want to be developed. We feel like we've got one of the top strength and conditioning programs in the country, one of the best nutrition programs in the country. We feel like we're sending a lot of players to the NFL that have come in here and gone through the process and developed. And so there's a lot of reasons that guys want to stay. And if we're doing our job, we're not going to have to worry about too many of those things.
Coach, is one of the harder things now, because I understand that there's a difference between, like $400,000 and $900,000 if that's the offer that somebody's going to get. But the difference between, say, $250 and $300, if the $250 place is better for you developmentally, $50,000 is not going to make or break you for a lifetime. And if you're in a place that works and you're making good money, like, is it hard to kind of teach young kids that lesson of like, look, I understand that this place came in and said they beat our offer by X amount of dollars that, over 10 years of your life, it'll be gone. Like, it's hard to explain, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Look, young people are no different than adults. I mean, you guys have coworkers and people that you've known your whole life that if they get offered $1 more they'll leave a perfectly great situation and take a chance to go someplace else across the country, away from friends and family, whatever it may be, for $1 more. Other people, that kind of stuff doesn't move the needle. I mean, there's more of a premium put on, am I being developed? Do I like the people I'm around? Do I feel like I'm respected? Am I getting a great education? What's my quality of life? All these things are factors. And I think sometimes we as adults want to simplify this and just say, look, it's all about the money. I don't think it's about the money at all, quite frankly. I mean, that's part of the conversation, but I think it's a small part of it. And all of us are the same way. I mean, when you have success, you have opportunities. And there's been coaches on our staff, myself included, after 2022, after we played for a national championship in year one, that had opportunities to leave and go make more money at places that are perceived to be bigger schools, maybe. But, we stayed here. All of us, most of our coaches have stayed here. The guys are happy here. They get to coach. I'm not micromanaging them. They get to be around great people day in, day out. The thing that we talk about the most here is being very careful about who we let into the building. There's just good people. We have a good work environment, and, we're fortunate to get to live in Fort Worth and get to represent TCU. It's a fantastic place to go to school. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I'm hoping she goes to TCU. And so it's just a very unique place, and we're fortunate to be here. And I think we have been around enough to appreciate it for what it is.
Coach, we got to talk to Corey Coleman just a couple of weeks ago, and one of many familiar faces on your staff. He was an electric player, and then obviously NFL didn't go the way that he hoped for, but he seems like he's really found a spark with this coaching thing. Just your thoughts on bringing him on board and what you've seen from him, and your thoughts on Corey the coach.
Yeah, I knew Corey the player, obviously. Saw him play at Baylor and saw what kind of player he was. Didn't really know him as a person. We interviewed him, and I got to be around him a little bit, and I was just incredibly impressed with his energy, his positive attitude, his ability to connect with young people. He had a hunger to really immerse himself in football and get into coaching. I mean, it's a hard way to make a living. There's a lot of uncertainty kind of in this profession, but Corey took it all on. He's just excited to be here. And he's had a huge impact on our young receivers and has really done a good job developing those guys and continuing to improve them. And, he loves recruiting. He's got an energy for it. He's got an ability to connect with young people. And so I think he's got a really bright future in the coaching profession.
And, of course, you've got Malcolm Kelly, who's fantastic at what he does. And Corey mentioned him when we had him on just 2 or 3 weeks ago. For former players who were stars, whether in college and maybe the NFL, is it easier or more difficult for them to coach? Because sometimes it came easy to them. Not all of them. They worked hard too. But does that make sense?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I didn't have to worry about that. I was not an athlete, not a very good player. So, look, sometimes, like you said, it is easy, for guys, and maybe sometimes they don't understand, all the minute details that make a difference. Because, it's like football is like anything else. I mean, there are some guys that are just really, really incredibly gifted, and the game is relatively easy for them. Most people, it's not. Most people, they have to work incredibly hard to play at a really, really high level. And Corey, I think, is one of those guys that, he had such a great college career. It probably didn't go the way he envisioned in the NFL. And I think there's probably a little bit of a hunger and a desire to really dive into the details now that he's gone through both kind of experiences. And so, he, as I said earlier, he's going to be a heck of a coach, really bright guy. But there is kind of that weird part of it sometimes when you're an exceptional athlete, sometimes the game is different for you than it is for others. And, most football players in college and most football players in the NFL, it's a grind. I mean, they're very talented, but it is a grind and it is very difficult. And for these guys to perform at a high level, they have to be very detailed. They have to do an incredible amount of work off the field, away from the building, taking care of their body and developing themselves a lot more than people realize, I think.
Coach, you've got a mostly veteran offensive line, but you've got a couple guys stepping in there. Ryan Hughes at left tackle, Ben Taylor Whitfield at right tackle. How comfortable are you now after spring with those guys as your tackle bookends and the overall combo of the offensive line?
Yeah, I really like those two guys. I mean, Ryan's played for us as a true freshman this year. Mm-hmm. Really came on and played well at the end of the year. He's one of those guys that I don't think any of us, when we recruited him, thought he was going to play as a true freshman. He just got better and better and better. He was already he fit the bill physically. I mean, he's a huge guy. He's athletic, all the stuff. But sometimes it takes a while mentally to get there. And he just jumped right in from day one, had a lot of confidence, and got in the mix and carved out a role for himself as a true freshman. And we moved him to left tackle. He really solidified that position for us. I thought he had an outstanding spring. And then Ben Whitfield is one of those guys that's very, very talented. He's a big guy. He's athletic. His best football is in front of him. He's got a really bright future. So we're really, really happy at those two tackle positions, and we're starting to develop some depth behind those guys as well.
I know that Paul asked you just kind of how you felt about spring earlier and all that, but all these big picture questions in college football right now, where are you on spring football as it currently is and has been? And obviously a lot of teams are canceling the big, to-dos, the 60,000, let's sell out spring. Where are you in terms of spring ball? And are you of the opinion that, hey, we can do some cross scrimmaging and that would be good for us? Or where are you with that?
Yeah, look, I think spring football is incredibly important to your program. And I think especially in today's world, because you're going to have a lot of new players that join in January. We had 27 new players that went through spring ball with us that were either high school kids or transfers. And so it was a big group. And every one of the reps was going to be really, really important for those guys. And so it was really, really important to our development as a program. We had some young players that didn't get to play that much last year that had an opportunity to get a lot of reps in the spring. And so it really is important to building your roster. The one thing I think you have to consider is the timing of the portal. If the portal continues to be late April, then you can make an argument about, and there's still going to be the kind of movement there is in the portal. You could make the argument that maybe you do some OTAs once your roster is set in June and all the transfer stuff is over. You could make the argument about doing something like that. My hope is that the spring portal goes away. If it goes to one portal in December, like in early January, and that's kind of what I'm hearing could happen. If that's what happens, then again, I think spring makes a lot more sense. I think you're going to see people at that point go back to the traditional spring football games and that kind of thing. Right now with what's going on in the world, if you've got a backup receiver that goes out there and catches, 12, 15 balls in the spring game or something, all of a sudden they're going to come into your office on Monday and say, hey, I want more money, or I'm going to go in the portal and see what kind of market value that I have and all these kind of things. And so, if you have a little bit more stability by only having one portal, then I think the emphasis returns to spring football.
Would you ever like any kind of an OTA setup? Chris Kleiman brought that up to us back in Vegas and has said it a couple of different times. Or if it does move back to just January only, I get that. But is that something you already pretty much have anyway during the summer?
It is, yeah. We you're allowed a certain amount of time to work with your players, and you want to maximize that the best you can without overdoing it. I think that in the college football world, a decade ago, you worried about your players having too much time off. Now you worry about them having too little time off. There's just the calendar shifted. These guys work incredibly hard. They train year round. A lot of times it's incredible to think of this, but we practice in the morning, and then we have players sometimes that go and do work after they get out of class in the afternoon, after practicing for 3-4 hours earlier in the day. And so, these guys are used to working hard. They're used to working with coaches and all the kind of stuff outside of the building, really. And so, anyway, it's an interesting time. But I think the OTAs are important as well. You can get so much done with your football team, so much teaching of scheme and all that, so many opportunities to have meetings, that what it does is it takes the emphasis off of the on the field work. that takes place during spring ball. And maybe you don't have to hit as much. You don't have to put as many players at risk as you normally do when you're trying to install an offense or defense, in fall camp. And so it prepares your football team, and I think takes a little bit of a load off of your players if you handle it the right way.
Sonny, my last question. Thanks for your time as always. There are these roster limit things out there, the house settlement or whatever. Have you had to talk to any players about not having room? And with that still not done, if you did, would that be retroactive to anybody that was going to be a part of your program that you said there was no room and they could come back? That seems very confusing to me.
Yeah, no, it is. That's the hardest part of all this that we're dealing with. I mean, I think that's why we're all hoping that this settlement gets signed quickly and everybody knows what's going on, because we have a bunch of players that are good college football players that want to go to quality schools and get a great education that are sitting there waiting right now going, look, I want to go to TCU, but I'm not sure if I can play football. If I can't play football, then I might try to go to school B. And so all these kids, their futures are kind of up in the air right now. And some of our walk-ons as well. I mean, you hate it for guys that have been here a year, 2 years, 3 years, even 4 years in some cases, and have paid so much into this football program. And all of a sudden you have to sit down with those guys and say, look, we may not be able to bring you back. So there's a lot of balls in the air right now. I don't know that anybody knows where they're all going to come down and how it's going to play out. My hope is that this will gradually happen. Maybe they go to 125 year one, maybe 120, and gradually work their way down to 105 if that's what they want to do. But I think that would be much more of a fair way to do it, because you do. Look, walk-ons are the fabric of any good college football team. Those guys are the hardest workers. Those guys are the best team guys. Those guys are the most willing to do whatever it takes to help the team. And to eliminate those guys, I think is a really big mistake in one fell swoop. And I understand why they want to get the roster under control from a cost standpoint and all the different things that, those 20, 25 players at the bottom of the roster, they're an expensive part of college football. And so I get wanting to trim the roster, but I think we should do it slowly and make sure we take care of those guys that are taking care of us.
We will see you at the Star in Frisco at Media Days in July. Thank you very much, Coach, for your time as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Sonny.
I'll see you guys in July.
Yes, sir. TCU football coach Sonny Dykes with us on 365 Sports. We appreciate his time. And yet another coach talked about, if you want to slowly but surely get us to a certain spot with the roster limits, okay, but to just cut off fingers immediately is something that, that a lot of those who represent the NCAA and also college programs and conferences are trying to figure that out, but they better figure it out quickly. When we come back, Dane Brugler, what a great story. He remember when he first came on the scene as an NFL draft analyst. Now he works for theathletic.com, and he has that Top 100 board. Had a chance to visit with him earlier to kind of summarize the draft and more. And then also Houston's Willie Fritz around the corner. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store on Lake Air Drive in Waco. And with the summertime around the corner, you maybe want to get the smoker going. If you do, you have your way of making sure you get the perfect brisket or ribs or chicken or whatever, maybe sausage it might be. The specials this week at Waco Custom Marketplace: select and choice brisket, whole chickens at $1.70 a pound, chicken drumsticks at 75 cents a pound, and then also pork spare ribs, $2.25 a pound. Boneless pork chops, $3.50 a pound. If I'm going to have the pork chops, you got to make the decision of the bone and or boneless. The boneless usually are pretty plump. And mahi-mahi, $18.50 a pound. And, of course, they have the butcher shop with beef, pork, poultry, and seafood. The bakery with all the fresh baked sweets that you want, treats that you want, fresh baked bread and kolaches every day. And if you are having a crawfish boil, they have the corn, they have the sausage, they have the mushrooms, they have the shrimp, and they have 30-pound sacks of live crawfish available. You can do that, and they're hiring right now if you need a job this spring or summer. Waco Custom Marketplace on Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions, IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Brugler, NFL draft expert, analyst, and a great story. And from theathletic.com joins me David Smoak, 365 Sports. Do you ever go through a post-draft depression?
You know, it's a weird feeling because you do all this work for this 3-day period, and then all of a sudden it's over. And so it's not about getting it right or wrong in the draft. I care more about getting it right or wrong 3 years from now. But just understanding why teams did what they did. And then also it's just a lot of looking towards next year. But instead of projecting these guys, it's fun to look back and see, okay, where did they land? What was the reasoning? The teams tell us what they're thinking based on their draft picks. You know, they tell us what they're thinking based off of the money they spend in free agency. And they tell us what they're thinking through their picks they make over the 3 days of the NFL draft. And so it's always interesting to look back on that and kind of examine it through that lens.
Did anyone, well, I know everybody improves themselves because they're adding talent. There's always a controversial pick or something. But in your opinion, was this, despite some of the changes in the first round and some of the stories, was this a pretty safe draft for most everybody?
Yeah, it was a unique draft because, you know, we only had 2 quarterbacks in the first round. And I think there was a lot of differing opinions from team to team about how certain positions were stacked. And so, you know, we saw a lot of offensive linemen go early. You know, it wasn't a super strong offensive line class, but there were some good players at the top and left without a chair. So a lot of offensive linemen went quickly. No surprise there. I think that every draft has its own identity. And this one, when we look back, we're going to look back at the defensive linemen. And then I think we're going to look back at, maybe some of the quarterbacks and say, okay, Cam Ward at number 1 overall, obviously we're going to look at him. But, hey, did Jackson Dart work out for the Giants? What about the next group of quarterbacks? Tyler Shuck for the Saints. What about, Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland, obviously. There's a lot of controversy around that. So I think it's going to be interesting looking back 2-3 years from now on these quarterbacks and say, hey, we were right. This was not a good quarterback class.
When did Tyler Shuck show up on your radar?
So watching him throughout the season this past year, because, he was a high recruit when he started out at Oregon, goes to Texas Tech and, did some fine things there before the injuries kind of derailed things for him. And then he goes to Louisville and it was like, okay, this is an interesting fit with Coach Braum and that offense. It's like, okay, we might have something here. And, I think throughout the season, you think about the Notre Dame tape, think about, some of the game played at, but, it's a 26-year-old quarterback and it's a unique situation with the injuries and just everything involved with his story, his background. And I just know when we were getting ready for the Senior Bowl, getting ready to go to Mobile, I did my Senior Bowl preview and I said, look, Tyler Shuck has a chance to be a top 50 pick. He has a chance to be one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in this draft. Just because of the skill set. And I think a lot of people turned off because of the age and, just the unique circumstances. But look, if you were 22 years old and a 4th-year senior, Tyler Shuck would have been a top 20 pick. So it would have a discount because of his age and the injury history, just kind of a unique set of circumstances. So we'll see Shuck pretty early for the Saints this year. And, because the Saints, they need to figure out what they have. They might be in a position next year to draft a quarterback very early. So they'll be doing a full evaluation on Shuck this year to figure out, okay, is he someone we can win with moving forward? But because he was a 2nd-round pick, not a 1st-round pick, if they feel like they have to move on next year, they can do that.
Is it also a trend? You mentioned Shuck's age, and of course he's been around. Bowman at Oklahoma State had been around a long, long time, and he's not in the NFL. But is the transfer portal and players now getting 4, 5, 6, sometimes longer years? Is the age as much of an issue now? You'd like to get a guy 2021, sure, but is that going to change a little bit?
Yeah, and I think teams have to evolve with what the college game is giving them, right? Like I remember it wasn't that long ago where the term air raid was like, oh, well, you can't draft that guy. Like the game is constantly evolving. The NFL has to evolve with it based off of just like college is evolving to what high schools are giving college teams. Mm-hmm. NFL needs to evolve what colleges are giving to NFL teams. And I do think that we had very few underclassmen this year. And part of that is the NIL and players feeling like they can go back to school, still get paid decent money, hold off the NFL for another year. So we will have more 22, 23, 24-year-olds drafted early than we have the past 10 years. There's no doubt about that. And especially quarterbacks. Carson Beck went back to school and transferred to Miami, and he'll be in next year's draft. We'll see how that plays out. But there's multiple positions where guys maybe, and this year is a good example. I mean, from a defensive tackle, went to the Steelers at 21 overall. He could have come out after his junior year, and who knows what he would have, maybe a 3rd, 4th round pick. He transfers to Oregon instead, gets paid, and turns himself into a 1st round pick. So we're seeing more 4th year, 5th year players in the draft pool than past years, just because of NIL and transfer portal. And it'll be interesting how, because it seems like college is very much in a position of flux where they're trying to figure things out and regulation and all these different things. So the NFL will have to continue to evolve based off of how college game continues to change.
Dan, was there one player among those top 25 to 40 or whatever, 50, that might have been the most, not misunderstood, but a name or two that people had completely differing opinions on, that some loved him and some just didn't quite get it?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is Shamar Stewart, the defensive end from Texas A&M, who the traits are fantastic. 6'5", 270 pounds, and a 4.5 40, 40-inch vert, unbelievable traits. And we saw that at the Senior Bowl. You watch it on film and you see flat career sacks. It's just, it's tough. And so a lot of teams were like, okay, just not productive enough for us. Not a first round pick. Other teams look at the traits and say, hey, we can develop this. You know, the scouting motto is traits over production. And Shamar Stewart is kind of the poster child for that. So, and the Bengals are one of those teams that look at it and said, there's just not many guys on this planet who can move like him, have this ability. Now it's up to our coaches to get more out of him. And so they made him a first round pick. That was a really interesting selection. Josh Simmons, a left tackle for the Chiefs, who, if not for, the interviews weren't great. The knee was a patella injury back in October. So there was a lot of split opinion on Simmons. And, if he were fully healthy, he would have been a top 15 pick. But some teams looked at the injury and said, that's just not going to work for us in the first round. So the Chiefs get him at the 32nd pick. And when we look back 2-3 years from now, Josh Simmons could end up being a steal. And because that's exactly what the Chiefs needed. They needed to address the tackle position, and they did so with a very talented player. Hopefully he's able to stay healthy.
There was always, it seemed like year after year, the Steelers had a good draft. They would let the draft come to them. They would never really extend too far. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore. The Ravens seem to do that a lot. Is that now also, does that now include on that mantle the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yeah, that's a good short list of teams who have, it's no surprise whether good teams stay good, right? And it starts with ownership and, just a steady structure of their front office. And that leaks down to the draft and the way the roster management and the way they address certain positions. Now, it was surprising to see the Eagles draft a linebacker in the first round. That's against type. But as we look further, his post-draft press conference about Jahad Campbell, the Alabama linebacker they drafted in the first round, he said the word edge more than he said linebacker. I think there's a very good chance when we see Campbell on the field, he becomes the Micah Parsons for the Eagles. The Eagles see Micah Parsons twice a year. I'm sure they're tired of facing Micah Parsons. Jahad Campbell, it could be their version of that. And it makes sense when you look at Campbell, going back to high school, he was an edge rusher. That's how he was recruited. He didn't move the linebacker until he got to Tuscaloosa. So Jahad Campbell, I think that makes sense. There's some, but that's just, the Eagles are willing to roll the dice at that point. And I think your overall point's exactly correct. I mean, the teams, Steelers, Ravens, they allow the draft fall to them. They get good players. And this year, no different. Derek Hartman, who I mentioned, going to the Steelers, can be anywhere from the 1 technique to the 5 technique. He fits the Steelers perfectly up front. They needed to address the defensive line. He was one of my favorite players in this draft. And then the Ravens, the sit pat later on in the first round, and get Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia, who maybe didn't have the production this year that teams were hoping to see, and that's why he went from a leader in the first round. But he's a versatile, athletic player with high football character, and that just fits the Ravens exactly what they needed.
Cowboys, Booker at 12. There's still things that maybe they got to fill between now and when the season begins. What about Will McClay? I know Steven, Jerry, and all the others get, and also Schottenheimer, his first team, like he had pretty good impact. What do you think they did? Did they get what they needed, or are they still a little bit empty in some places?
Well, I mean, I'm sure everyone would agree. There's certain positions they can continue to improve, and I'm sure they'll continue. And you look at running back, you look at receiver, you look at some of the spots on defense. It's corners, one of those positions they'll continue to look at. But you don't want to go into the draft hungry. You don't want to have to. It's like grocery shopping when you're hungry and you end up buying way more stuff than you should. It's kind of like that when you're the Cowboys. You have all these needs, but you don't want to reach for certain needs, certain positions. You want to let the draft fall to you. And I think once Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, once he was off the board, went number 8, eyes shifted to Tyler Booker. And, that's because when you have a top 12 pick, you want to draft the best players, not you don't want to target a position. You want to draft the best players. Tyler Booker, the Cowboys believe, will be a Pro Bowler. And so even though we can argue guard, is that worthy of a top 12 pick? And you know what? In this draft, I think it was. And with Booker, even though the athletic traits don't jump off the page in terms of the combine testing and all that, when you watch his film, he does exactly what you want your guard to do. You maintain the depth of the pocket. He's able to push guys around and create run lanes. And so you drop him into that offensive line, and all of a sudden you feel like it's once again a strength to this offense. And for the Cowboys, that's exactly what they needed to give Dak the time to look downfield and find guys, open guys. And the running game we know is a little bit in flux. We'll see with Williams kind of poised to be the starter, but maybe they can use more help at running back. It'll be interesting to see how this offense functions.
Dane, has there been a franchise that has had a better facelift than the Washington Commanders since the ownership change? Jaden Daniels, they seem like now they kind of get the draft, and now the stadium news. Is there one that has changed so dramatically, so quickly than them?
The most underrated part of sports is how important ownership is. And I don't care what sport you're talking. I don't care if you're talking NFL, NBA, baseball, NASCAR. And that sets the tone for everything else. And for the Commanders, new ownership comes in. They hire the right people. You are lucky enough to be in a draft with a top quarterback when you're picking with one of the early picks. And all of a sudden, things are drastically different than they were 2 years ago. And so, if you're the Commanders, you have to be awfully optimistic about what's the trajectory of this organization moving forward. You feel like you have the quarterback, you feel like you have the owner, you have the coach, you have the GM. Now it's all about sprinkling in the pieces around pieces of the organization. And so, the Commanders are in a good spot. There's no doubt. It's if you're a Cowboys fan, an Eagles fan, a Giants fan, you like the Dan Snyder ownership era because you felt like, all right, we're going to continue to compete and have a good chance to beat this team. Now, not so much. It's a different type of situation in Washington.
One more question on the Cowboys, and then a question about next year, and then I know you got to go. Savon Revel, the kid from East Carolina that you look at him and all that, and the stories, injury, academics, ACL, whatever else. Cowboys draft guys who have been injured. They're not afraid of that. When will he be able to help them, and how really good was he on your list?
Well, going back to last August, entering the year, he was a top 20 pick on my way too early draft board. It had the ACL, and that's always tough. But the Cowboys, you're right, have never been scared of those guys on day two, where there's a little bit of a risk, but we'll bet on the reward. And Ravel, I had so much fun covering him the last few months, talking to him, talking to his dad, talking to his story is fantastic. If people don't know the full story, I suggest checking out The Beast, my draft guide. You get all the details in there. But he's just not many 6'2", 200-pound corners who have 4.3 speed and have the ball skills that he offers. So he has yet to play his best football. It's just, can he stay healthy? Can he stay on the field? And the Cowboys need him. We don't know the situation exactly with Diggs and when he'll get back on the field. Deron Bland's entering a contract year. You hope they get that figured out, but you never know. Jordan Lewis is no longer on this team. So I think at some point, he's expected to start, be close to 100% in July when training camp gets going. So you hope it might not be immediate, but at some point during his rookie year, you hope Ravel is able to step in and kind of prove that he belongs to be on the field.
You mentioned the quarterbacks this year. My goodness, if you look forward, Dane, around the country, it's stacked. The Big 12, who we cover quite a bit, might have 3 to 5 guys that are highly drafted, or at least someone that people will look at. Is it the complete opposite, you think, you look forward to next year, the quarterback class, than this year?
Yeah, there's no Caleb Williams, Drake May necessarily, where it's like, oh yeah, these easy superstar, like those guys are going to be easy top pick. Now, Arch Manning maybe can be that guy. He has the hype. He has the last name. We just haven't seen enough to be able to say he'll be the guy. But I will say there's a lot of names, and a lot of them are pretty exciting. And you're right. There's some, down where you are. I think just think about Arizona State and Sam Leavitt and what he was able to do. Obviously, no more. Scadaboo, and that will be something they'll have to replace. But Sam Levitt is him, and what he was able to do for the Sun Devils is really exciting. So eager to see him. There's some love for Avery Johnson, the Kansas State quarterback, and he's a dual threat guy. Scouts feel like he's just kind of scratching the surface. So there's a lot of quarterbacks next year that are really promising, and it's all about, all right, who's going to take that next step? Who's going to develop and prove that, hey, I'm a first-round pick? And so it'll be interesting to see who's able to kind of pull ahead of the pack, because right now it feels like a really crowded group. And for a lot of NFL teams, that's music to their ears when we look towards next year's draft.
Dane, thank you very much. Get some rest. Appreciate your time. Dane Brugler, theathletic.com on the draft. This is 365 Sports. Don Chumador and Coffee Beans in the Townwood Shopping Center between Valley Mills and Richland Drive. I was there on Saturday afternoon, dropping by to pick up a handful of cigars. I was going to play golf on Sunday. And then also I needed to get my Rocky Patel torch lighter fixed. It wasn't working. It's a very nice one that I have had for several years. And they, of course, sent it off and know the right people. And they couldn't fix it. For whatever reason, they sent me one to replace it, because that's what Rocky Patel, the name, is all about. Both Cheyenne and Joshua know the cigar business. If you like the best, whether it's Padron or Cohiba or Ashton or Rocky Patel or La Fontana, one of the newest ones that I like is My Father La Galera. It's a really nice, it's a Churchill length cigar too. Vita Dreams, if you have struggles at night to try to fall asleep, that can help you out. And if you have chronic pain, CBD product called For Bad Days. Don Chumador and Coffee Beans in the Townwood Shopping Center, just off Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco.
Alan Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget, from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Alan Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560, or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors. Baylor Athletics Trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
365 Sports, joined by Willie Fritz, head football coach at the University of Houston. There he is with all those helmets in the background. David Smoak and Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. How you doing, Coach? Are you in a decompression mode with spring workouts, the portal that at least we think has closed. What's it like this week?
Well, it's, kind of reviewing everything, reviewing spring football, reviewing, the portal. We're full and, feel good about our roster right now. And then a bunch of our guys are out spring recruiting. This is the time where college coaches can go to high school campuses. Unfortunately, you don't allow the head coaches to go out. But I get reports on those guys. I watch film. They try to video a little bit while they're there watching kid maybe work out or whatever the case may be. So there's plenty to do.
Coach, for the portal this year, it was much more coming in than coming out for you, but you did get a couple guys that jumped in here in the spring portal. Were you ready roster wise to take that on, or did they catch you by surprise at all?
No, you got to make decisions based on what's best for your program, and you got to make sure you have guys that fit your culture and are going to help your culture and make sure of that. And so we had to make some decisions on that as well, just to, be sure that we're, going in the right direction. And, so each individual's, we treat as an individual and try to do what's best for our team and for the individual as well. But we feel good about it. We feel like we got some good kids and we're excited about it.
What stood out to you most about year number one down in Houston?
One thing that, in the Big 12, everybody's pretty good. I played in some other leagues where, maybe there was a couple games that I don't want to say roll the ball out, but you could, if you played halfway decent, you were going to probably get a win. Everybody's well coached. Everybody's got good talent. There's a lot of parity. I was impressed with the league in my first season of competition. So just a very, very competitive league from top to bottom.
Did you learn anything other than that about the conference you didn't already know?
No, not really. I'm from Kansas City originally. So
right.
Big 8 guy for years and years and years. And then obviously the Big 12. So I had some familiarity with it. But, I know a few of the coaches, some of the coaches I'd competed against, at other spots that I'd been at. I just think from top to bottom, very well coached and a lot of really good players and a distinct difference from a group of 5 football that I was involved with without question.
Willie Fritz, head coach at Houston, with us on 365 Sports.
Coach, there's a lot of new faces in year 2, like year 1, because of the way it is. Is it easier to meld those guys in after year 1? Because you like you said, it's culture guys, so you have some people in there in the program that understand after a year that the culture is set.
Yeah, I think it is. Majority of the coaches are back, and that really helps you. The support staff, majority of them are back as well, and I think they understand. I was kind of looking at our staff because we had a kid in yesterday, and his mom made the comment, gosh, it seemed like most of these coaches either played for you or coached for you or both. So I've got a lot of them that have done both for me, and that I think that continuity, helps you, particularly in year 2, because now we were all at a new place, but they understand, these are going to be the solutions to problems maybe we had in year 1. And then also you got to find out where you were strong at. Obviously in year 1 in the Big 12, we were not very good on offense, and we weren't very good on the offensive line in particular. And that was an area that we had to address. And we addressed that in December and picked up 5 guys who'd started Division I football and done a good job at the different places they were at. We want to get to a point with high school recruiting where we're going to be able to supplement our roster with people from the portal. But unfortunately, where we're at right now, we had to really jump into it hard and heavies. But that was an example of one position that needed to be addressed quickly.
I know the ending isn't what people wanted, but how much juice, electricity, and how much fun was that seeing what Kelvin Sampson and men's basketball was able to do this past season?
It was awesome. I just got done talking to our track coach about it. I drove over to the championship game, and I'm a big Buc-ee's fan. I ought to get some money from those guys, right? Fletcher, some NIL or something. But anyway, I stopped in Waller and got something to eat in Waller, and the whole place was red. You know, and then when I drove down, and I had to stop again in Luling, and same thing. Everybody in the place was red, and you know they did, you know, what they did for the university. You just can't measure. It's unbelievable publicity. I got a chance. I'm a big basketball fan. I played basketball in college. I got a brother who's a highly successful high school basketball coach. And I love going to games. I go to practices on occasion and watch Coach Sampson, and just got a lot of respect for what he did with the program and everything he did for the University of Houston.
How can other sports success, or is the success of what they did, can it be contagious across all sports?
Well, I've told our kids that, you know, I've used two examples. One is, you know, Arizona State kind of had the template for the University of Houston. They were 3-9 2 years ago, and they were Big 12 champs this last year. And, you know, I happened to be at that game. They played in the Peach Bowl, and woulda, shoulda, coulda, but there's a couple calls in there I wasn't quite sure about. But they really represented the conference in a first-class manner. So that's one area that we've talked about. And then also basketball. You know, you do it in football, it's 10 times that, you know, when you have, you know, great success in football. And, you know, so, yeah, we're you know, I talk about our, you know, our men's basketball team all the time and what they've done for the university, and, you know, how that's possible for U of H to do that with the football program.
Well, Coach, you know, you've got a new quarterback. You went and you got a really good tight end in the portal. Like, do you get excited to, like, especially some of the guys that haven't been there in practice? Like, do you start getting excited now about, like, oh, I can't wait till fall, and to see these guys all together?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. You know, putting together a team. You know, we went through spring ball. I had 2 new coordinators, and you know, the NCAA is allowing you to do more than you used to be able to. You know, there's some times where you can have a football for, you know, a couple hours a week that you can do some things. So, you know, one of the things I think people got to be careful of is doing too much, you know, and we're very careful about that. We want the season to be the primary focus. But yeah, I liked how we installed our offense and defense and kicking game throughout the spring. I like the addition of the kids that we had that worked with us in spring football. And I like the addition that we had, you know, with some guys that we've signed here in the last few weeks. I think these guys are, you know, got great ability and have competed at a high level, and they were position needs for us. And, you know, that's what we went out and addressed. And yeah, it's exciting to have them all come back on May the 27th and get after it this summer.
What is more of an impact, Slade Nagel coming in as a coordinator or Connor Wigman being a guy that has experience at quarterback?
Boy, one of them's going to get pissed at me, aren't they?
Yeah, which child do you like better, right?
That's right.
Well, you know, from a football coach's perspective, obviously you hope both of them have a great impact on you.
Yeah, you know, I you know, Slade was with me at Tulane and did a fantastic job there, and you know, he went over to LSU. He'd been there before, and I was fortunate enough to get him back over here because, you know, he didn't call plays there last year, and he went. You know, he really enjoyed. He didn't know how much he was going to miss it, I think, was part of it. So really excited about, you know, understanding him, and he understands me, and how, you know, I liked how he called games, you know, for us at Tulane. And then Connor, I'm just so excited to have him as well. He just Sean Bell, how long? All right, 11 minutes. Sean, you know, really recruited, you know, Connor out of high school. I think he was the first D1 school to offer Connor coming out of high school. So they had a great relationship. I think he wanted to come back to Houston. Connor's dad actually played for us at Sam Houston when I was a coordinator there in 1991. So I had some familiarity with his dad. And I just think they wanted to come back to Houston. And you know, he's been just awesome. Just, you know, great teammate, great leader. And I think he's excited for a fresh start as well.
You've coached a lot of spring ball. It sounds like from coaches we talked to, you're still getting the work that you want to get in, but what are your thoughts on just how it falls now and the calendar and the changing of spring games and all that comes with that? Do you have any sort of stance on the state of spring ball, I guess, so to speak, compared to the more traditional era, I guess?
I think the first thing that's going to have to be decided is the spring portal windows. Are they going to have two of them still, or are they going to have one? And when is that one portal going to be? I know the coaches voted for one portal window, but I think we're about 0 for 78 on different ideas that we've suggested over the last few years. So we're going to have to see what happens there. And I was on the rules committee for a while. I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, and I guess more than that when I was at Georgia Southern. That was one of the things that I suggested, along with a couple other coaches. Coach Calhoun from Air Force is trying to have some spring games against a different opponent. We didn't do a very good job because they told us no, and now I know some people are kicking that idea around as well. I think if there's going to be a second portal window, we probably need to go to the OTA model of the NFL in the summer. And that's going to be more of your traditional spring ball, so to speak. So we'll see. I talked to Craig Bowl, who's right there where you guys are located in Waco, and he's been a good friend for many years. I know they're trying hard to, get a little handle on all this, so we're not changing the rules yearly. Then everybody can make plans, and I hope that's what happens.
Willie, the SEC has a rule about the transfer portal that in the spring, and if it goes to the one in January, I don't know if it changes, but you can't transfer within the conference. Has the Big 12 ever discussed that?
I haven't been in the conference very long, so I don't know. I think it's a great rule. I think all it does is create problems between institutions, coaches, student athletes, whatever the case may be. So I do think it's a great rule, but I'm not the one who's going to decide that.
With what's happening with the settlement and his constantly being pushed back, and somebody makes a decision here pretty soon. How has that affected?
When's that going to be?
Well, boy, I tell you what, you could write a book and make millions on that. And I know you have other things you got to get to, but a couple more questions. Have you had conversations with players about not any room left? And let's say if the settlement goes through and they are more flexible with the roster limits, do you bring them back? How does that work?
Well, I think that was a tough part of it. They didn't really put a whole lot of forethought into it. But, you got kids who've been on your team, and all of a sudden you're going down to 105, and you already had promised some high school kids to join your team. And all of a sudden you're, the number that we've all been at for a long time. Most everybody in the Big 12, I assume, is between 115 and 125, so somewhere in that area. So, I thought it was good by the judge to say, hey, I want you to put some more thought into this, and I'd like to see you grandfather the kids in. And, so we've told the kids, we had a bunch of the kids get in the portal just so they could cover their rear and have a place to go in case it stays at 105 and we're not going to have a spot for them. But there just seems to be a lot of decisions that are being made that are happening on the spur of the moment rather than, thinking about it and giving us some time to implement, the different plans that they want us to follow.
I couldn't agree with you more. Paul?
Coach, some of these, especially like when you get, some of the stuff that's happened where in this spring portal that's only like 10 days long, right? It's like one of those hostage movies where all of a sudden he's like, I need $500,000 in 3 days, or it's going to be bad. Does it feel like that sometimes? Or do you have to be like, look, if that's going to happen, then just go. I mean, like that's probably the easier way to deal with it, but there's so much pressure from the outside on you guys. I would imagine there's sometimes those reactions of like, all right, well now I have to raise all this, like almost maybe $1 million in less than a week.
Well, that's something that we're working through here at the University of Houston. There's some schools that have got a lot of money and they're doing what they call front loading with a lot of guys so they can, make their cap number a lot higher than what's going to occur in July. But yeah, we had some conversations. There were some student athletes that we were not, going to be able to increase them or not to the level that they wanted to. And it's one of the good things is I've got some former players and different people who are in NFL front offices, and we're trying to learn from them. And I just hope we have some continuity with the rules so that everybody can have a good plan of attack and it doesn't change on the fly like it seems like it's done over the last couple of years with decisions that have come down to us.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. I know you juggle the roster, whatever. Last thing, tell Rashawn Sanford we said hi. We watched him at Harker Heights. I know he had the knee injury, was able to play a little bit last year. I know you have Snead and a pretty big group of people in the running back room, but how electric can he be for you?
He had a really good spring. He really did, and we're blessed to have a good group of running backs. And they're going to compete. They're all going to play early. It's there's some positions you can practice and scrimmage and do all those kind of things, but you really determine the pecking order and how much guys are going to play based on your first few games of the season. And that's going to be the case with us at running back position. We've got some good backs, and Rashawn had a fantastic spring, and Stacy Snead, as you mentioned, along with some of the other backs, and they're going to compete to. They all want to be the bell cow, right? You only got one football, So we'll find out those first few weeks who that dude's going to be.
Thank you very much, Willie. We appreciate your time, and good luck managing whatever you manage, because you don't know half the time what's going to happen and change the next day. Appreciate you very much.
Well, one thing, you got to adapt. You got to understand that. I'm blessed. I got the best job in the goddamn world. I don't sound like a whiner. Hopefully I didn't today, but no Cougs. Thank y'all.
No, that's Willie Fritz, head football coach at Houston, with us on 365 Sports. To all the coaches we've had on, all of them, they just let us know what the rules are. We'll do them. And then of course, a lot of them change from, sometimes from one part of the year to the other, and hope to God, although, we've learned that it's not going to change everything if the settlement is ever actually signed off. When we come back, Craig Smoak and Off the Radar, we have the 5 o'clock hour with Hall of Fame columnist John McClain, top 5 and more, and this is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Marco's Pizza with 5 locations in the Waco area, and you can always go online at Marco's Pizza, marcos.com. They have the limited time only, the Pepperoni Fest, starting at $5. Use the code word from the online app, PepFest. Order now, and you can have all the pepperoni you want, the Pepperoni Magnifico, including just everywhere you look on the top of that pizza or the pie, or what is the cheese and the sauce and the crust. $9.99, large Pepperoni Fest, Pepperoni Magnifico, where there is pepperoni spread out everywhere. Marco's New More menu. You can do that now. Menu items starting at only $5, and you can go from anywhere that's got some sweets and treats all the way to the pizza, all the way to the Cinnabons, and much more. That is a new pepperoni bread, by the way, is also is on the menu. It's Bob Mock with 5 locations: Woodway, Robinson, Hewitt, also in China Spring and in Belmead. Marco's Pizza, fastest growing pizza brand in America. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Car Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome back into 365 Sports, taking a look at some stories outside of the norm. And here we are with Off the Radar twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at around this time for the live viewers. But thanks to anybody who also catches us after the fact, of course. And a little bit of, I guess this is sort of kind of breaking news in the last hour. Maybe this isn't a big surprise. I have admittedly not been the biggest college basketball follower, and I've made that very clear. Nothing against it. I'm just not as tuned in as I once was, is just how I put it. So there's things that maybe seem obvious that it takes me a second longer to realize isn't as obvious. But Bill Peterson, formerly of Scott Drew's staff at Baylor, has a new gig. And he is joining up with Jerome Tang at Kansas State as they just put out a release in the last hour from Jerome Tang. I am fired up to have Coach Bill Peterson as a part of our staff. He brings a wealth of experience in both college and the NBA. Every coach, player, and person associated with K-State basketball will be better because of the addition of Coach Peterson. So that just came down. I know you guys are we're all familiar. But Bill Peterson going and hooking up with a familiar face and Jerome Tang up there in Manhattan, Kansas.
He spoke at our banquet a couple of years ago. Great dude, great story, veteran.
I hope
defensive guy.
Hope those guys have a jump rope.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't, they're ready for it. That's his big deal is you have to be able to jump rope as many times as he tells you to do it before you leave some of these workouts. So might as well listen. I'm just telling you, Kansas State players, go in there and start doing it now if you haven't already.
One of the things about him is he's pretty much seen everything, right, when it comes to basketball from the different levels of where he has been. And Jerome Tang needs a little pick-me-up with his staff. Good for him. Good for Bill Peterson, and glad that's working out for them.
Yeah, so I just wanted to pass that along since you guys know him, and he's been around a long time. So there you go with that. This is not so much an official report, but it is something I caught before the show, and it was too unofficial and also just too soon before the show to add this back in. But Andy Staples had a tweet, and I don't have an On3 sub, so I couldn't read the state of the article, but it was referring to the possibility that the SEC moving to 9 games might hinge on automatic playoff bids. And again, I don't know the details. It's not an official report because I looked around, because if it was, then you'd have Yahoo reporting on it and ESPN reporting on it. But he did have a tweet out there about that, how the future of SEC scheduling may ride on the CFP's decision to include automatic bids in its next format. Let's just say that is true. You tell them to stick it, and you're just going to keep playing your conference games 8 at a time rather than 9 at a time, right? Like, nobody's dumb enough to give them automatic playoff bids so that they play South Carolina versus LSU as opposed to South Carolina versus
Stanford,
Furman or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. That came across earlier. I think we're all in agreement that
no.
Yeah, we're not giving up auto playoff bids so you play an extra conference game.
Nobody wants it that bad.
Exactly, right?
Like, nobody wants it that bad. Come on. Like, that's not.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Like, so who's it like, again, who's it for? Like, the 9 conference games would be okay. That's more TV money, but we're going to so you guys have it. What I would do is I would just tell them like, all right, well, that'll be the thing we talk about in your down years is that you only played eight conference games. ACC does it too. It just, they're far less consequential, so nobody notices.
Well, nobody cares about the fact the ACC does it. Nobody brings that up.
Like, there's certain times when, depending on the conference, that another conference has done it before, but then there's people fire bullets at it, and yet the 8 conference games is something the SEC takes most of the heat, and the ACC sits back and says, well, we're okay too over here. I don't. I've done a lot more thought process on the automatic qualifiers. I would rather never back down from what one of the original ideas was about the Big 12 and everybody else. I do think that, what was it, last week when they had meetings up in Irving, that they walked away without any deal, right? Mm-hmm. And Ross Dellinger's part said that, well, there was some blowback, that's going to be not as easy as maybe, even though they run everything, the Big Ten and SEC thought it would be.
Yeah, so I know we normally don't talk too much college football in this segment because it's off the radar after all, but that was just kind of a tweet that I had seen right before we started, and I think most fans, especially those that pay their money, they're all for it. And I honestly don't think that you're getting docked that much, because what is the small percentage that, like, South Carolina, I mean, they barely missed the playoff last year, but, like, does that extra game ensure that versus if you were playing Charlottesville State or something? Like, is there I don't know. I can see where there's more damage because you're playing a more difficult schedule by one game, but is it so drastic that it's worth all of the benefits of having a 9-game schedule? I guess that's part of what they're weighing. Obviously, this all comes down to one thing and one thing only. How much does ESPN want to pay for a 9th conference game? That's all this really boils down to. Like every other problem in college sports of like, okay, where's the money and where's it going and where does it need to go? All right, that's how you solve this. But I am getting a little worn on the will they, won't they of the conference games. I think if you're a season ticket holder, you're like, hell yeah, give me a 9th game that's going to be way better for the money that I'm spending versus this, throwaway game for the most part. But it'd be interesting to see if that's actually the tactic. And at some point, you just got to, at some point they're just going to have the power anyways. But there's at least something that was proposed by Andy Staples or they caught word of that was floating around there. So I thought that was interesting to bring up. But yeah, I'd love to see them go to 9 games just for viewership purposes, but we'll see where they go from there. Meanwhile, NFL draft, not a lot to report coming out of that, but it was the most watched draft behind only 2020. Saturday's final coverage surpassed 2020 as the most watched as far as the final day of coverage goes, but it averaged 4.3 million viewers, which is up 43% from last year. And why do you guys think that is? The only higher draft was 2020, and that's because we had no sports whatsoever to watch.
Oh,
in
we were
April.
like begging
Was it Shadur's plummet?
That's what they're attributing it to. Was Shedeur Sanders not going on night 1, so a bunch of people tuned in on night 2 that might otherwise not have tuned in, that wanted to see how far he would keep falling or when he would finally stop falling. But yeah, big jump, 43% from last year. And there's a lot of pointing to Shedeur Sanders as Thursday's viewership increased 11%. Friday and Saturday surged by more than 40%, according to Sports Media Watch. So, maybe Shedeur had a little something to do with that. Viewership up 52% on NFL Network, up 20+% on ESPN. Most watched draft since 2017, second most behind 2020. So, the NFL draft is a juggernaut, and you compare that, the 4.3 million, and just for comparison purposes, because they so neatly list it next to the article, NBA draft, 2 days, 2.7 million. So that's little over half the audience that still watches the NBA draft. WNBA draft has got like the healthier numbers they've ever had. Obviously, had 1.25 million, so that's a quarter, give or take, of the NFL audience.
The one this year, without.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess with Paige Beckers and company. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, and you still got the fumes from last year and all that's created. So, 1.25 million. So less than half of the NBA's, about a quarter of the NFL's, and then MLB and NHL don't even get enough viewers to have a rating. So, good for the WNBA, I guess. You can promote that. We got the third most watched draft in pro sports, but pretty healthy. And I would imagine that a lot of people tuned in for Shedeur. I don't know what y'all think. I said this yesterday, man, but honestly, not having to sit there for all 7 rounds and wait on Garmin Randolph's name to maybe or maybe not be called so I can write an article about it was, no disrespect. I enjoyed doing that in the past, but man, that was so nice to not have to do that this year. Those
guys,
picks
right?
just
5
drag
players.
and drag on Saturday.
Well, I agree. If it wasn't sometimes our group text, I wouldn't have known what was going on. I kind of got off the grid a little bit.
I love the draft, and I watch. This is the most I've ever watched on a Saturday before.
Really?
And look, I was because of Shedeur. I was very curious as to where he was going to go, and I
could have been on a Friday.
No, he got drafted on Saturday.
Oh yeah,
Saturday. He got drafted on Saturday. So, I thought like, okay, well. I won't have to watch as much on Saturday because I won't have as many questions. But then I was just intrigued by where is this going to go?
Right.
And then I do think that if the Browns don't draft him where they do, there's a good chance that he wasn't drafted at all.
Which is insane, though, when you really think about it.
And that would have been insane. And I wasn't obsessed with the narrative. I was just curious as to teams, because of the way that you – look, if you don't feel that you're going to, in 5 years that Shedeur Sanders is going to be your starting quarterback, then you don't draft him in the first, 35, 40 picks. Okay, I had kind of left the fact that, nobody drafts quarterbacks in the 3rd round anymore unless it's just an absolute, why not?
He became a car wreck. He became –
And so I just kept wondering. And then, on Saturday, I don't even really have the sound on much, I kind of go in and out, but I watched, well into the 5th round because of that. And then after that, it was just, I was on to other things.
I think a lot of people watched because they hoped he kept dropping. And then a lot of people watched because they started there some, no matter whatever percentage was like, God almighty, I hope the guy gets drafted to see the reaction.
Yeah, of course. And, for all the people that felt like he was getting too much coverage, I think that was probably fair. If they felt like Mel Kiper was being a bit of a B about the whole situation, that's fair as well. But, I think at some point, it's not like you're watching in everybody's – there's that narrative that kind of comes from his camp of everybody's just a hater. And it's like, no, I'm just looking at the car wreck like you. I have no opinion on it. I really don't care whether he gets drafted or not. But damn, if it's not interesting that he keeps not getting drafted and all of these other dudes who are not better players than him are getting drafted, that was fascinating. And so, you can see how that led to a big couple of days for the NFL and their draft coverage. Anyways, there you have that. All right, moving on to some playoff discussion. But first, one more NFL note. The Commanders yesterday reaching a deal with the District of Columbia to build on the former site of RFK Stadium, the longtime home of the Washington Redskins franchise. Of course, they've been out in Maryland now for the last several years, but going back to D.C. has been the goal of the new regime, and it took a big step forward as they have now reached a deal on returning the Commanders franchise to RFK Stadium, where they were for so long. A 65,000-seat stadium is the proposal. A 65,000-seat stadium still stands there. The one that they were in for 30-plus years from 61 to 1997. But obviously they're going to knock all of that down and turn it into what Josh Harris says will be the best stadium in the country. $4 billion project. 2.7 will be from the team to build the new stadium. 1.147 will come from the District of Columbia for other costs. They also are planning on having like a 179-acre complex like every place does now with bars and restaurants and garages and stores and all of that. The plan is to open it up in 2030 and, get back to their roots. It will be 65,000 seats. So I guess like the old one, but it will also be domed. And there's conversations on whether that will be retractable or if that will be the permanent dome. But in addition to the shopping complex, as you see that looks incredible. But as you have with the shopping complex, part of the reason for the dome is not so much whether it is, but it's also we want to have concerts and we want to do all of those things. So that's weather related.
They want to host the draft there.
They want to host They want to host a Super Bowl.
They
there.
want to, and they will.
And they probably will.
They will, even at 65,000. RFK I think was in the 50s at one point, but it was loud as hell and it was just unbelievable. But you couldn't have done this with another guy that owned the team. The momentum the franchise has. Paul and Craig is insane. I just hope to God they keep it.
Can we do when they do? Can we do Radio Row at the Smithsonian? That would be
awesome.
That would entertain me
at the Lincoln Memorial or somewhere. Yeah,
the Lincoln Memorial's outside.
But it's got a big overhang area.
Yeah, and it's cold in February in DC most of the time. But 8,000 parking spots I saw with wide open tailgating. They're also designing like a one of a kind rideshare area, which. For 2030, I would think it's going to be a big deal, and look, there's public transportation, the metro in DC, which will be good. So I'm excited. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the.
Are you going to change over?
No, I'll never change over.
No, I won't either, even after 20 years of hell.
No, I won't change over. I'm excited that there's a franchise that's fun to watch, I guess, right now.
I think you just
trying different things.
You love Garrett and Craig and me, and we love Washington.
I'm glad that you guys are happy because I never will be again.
Yeah, I think you probably will be at some point, but for right now, it is nice that for the first time in a long time, the Commanders are a more functional franchise than the Cowboys are. That stadium looks badass.
First time like once or twice in the last 30 years. Yeah, it does, Craig. I agree.
Even with the ceiling on there, that looks very, very cool. And so, I misread. It will be a 65,000 seat. The way it was worded in one of those articles, I got confused with RFK. RFK was like 56,000. I think
it was 50.
That was.
Yeah,
so
one
this
time.
Would be a little bigger in terms of seating, but that looks freaking incredible.
A lot of RFK was bleacher driven too, where they had temporary bleachers that came out. So when they all started jumping up and down, you could feel the place shake.
Yeah.
Doesn't that almost look like if it was larger, it could be like an Olympic venue?
I don't know how they would make this retractable, but I'm not an engineer, so that would be for them to figure out. But I do like, and I think the Browns might be similar to this. I haven't looked at their drawings in a while, but for some reason that strikes me as somewhat similar. But I like that the dome is not like a cover and with a skylight in it or something. It's actually like Jerry's World is.
Like you can still feel like you're outside and breathing.
Yeah, it looks like it's out. It looks like you're basically outside, and there's just arches over you. That's. But obviously there's glass there. That's incredible looking. So, it would be a bit bigger than RFK. 2030 is the date they're looking at, but another big green light. So they're looking like they're moving back to RFK now officially.
From Gregory in the chat room, I've been to RFK Stadium. I had been like 8 to 10 times in my life. The last time was in 92, 93. It's a great location. And the metro line stops right there. So there's also a transportation lock-in right there.
Yeah, so there you go. Commanders really living life to the fullest right now with the new ownership of Josh Harris, Magic Johnson, and various others. It's been a fun ride, and they're looking to keep the good times going. Meanwhile, just a couple of playoff notes. Last night, notably, Panthers beat the Lightning in the NHL playoffs to take a 3-1 series lead, as they just remain one of the best franchises in hockey. Shout out Katie Engelson, their rink reporter, I guess you'd refer to her as. But also the Stars beat the Avalanche 6-2 as Dallas now takes a 3-2 series lead. And, I always tell y'all how most of the time I drive back after the show and I listen to the ticket for a little bit of Dallas, just especially with the Lucas stuff that was happening. I just had to kind of get my fix. And one of the hosts was calling this series over like 3 days. It was like, series is over, is over.
Yep.
And just wasn't surprised that person was waving the white flag, but you had Bob Sturm, Mr. Stars, hockey lover, who was like, hey man, this series isn't over by a long shot. He's like, you're a quitter, and basically dogged on him as much as he should have. But that just sticks with me because here we are now, and Dallas leads the series 3-2 after last night. So the guy who watches hockey knew it was too early to wave the white flag. The guy who doesn't really took his ball and wanted to go home. But here the Stars are up 3-2.
The NHL playoffs are, and Garrett, I mean, you're going to chime in here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
They are, you can't they're the one of the professional playoffs that you can't just make an assumption because things can turn on a dime so well. The NBA playoffs, when somebody's down, 2-0 or whatever, you can kind of feel the slog of the other team a lot of the time. Oklahoma City and Memphis was like that. Memphis had a chance to get a win and then completely shattered. But the NHL isn't like that just because, the way that it just goes every night is crazy. Gosh, I got the hiccups.
You want this right here?
I'm okay.
Be careful. One of the things I thought when the Avalanche beat the Stars in Game 1, Daniel, he goes, oh my God, because they had lost at that time that was 8 or 9 straight
in a row,
and you wondered, and they bounced back. Good for the Stars, and then winning 6-2. Now it's in their. Well, they go back to Denver for Game 6.
Yeah,
it's like 2-2, 1-1-1. So they're a win away.
Yeah. That's so, Garrett, any thoughts on the Stars as the actual Stars fan here?
I mean, honestly, I knew this was going to be one of those that it was probably going to go 6 to 7 games. I did one of the brackets. I picked the Stars to make it out of this round, but I have them falling in the next round. I think they got healthy at the right time. They are finding themselves more cohesive from that. I hate personally that these games are starting so late because y'all know me, I cannot stay up late. So I think I've watched one full game in this entire series, which pisses me off. But it will be nice. I think they can get past them. Like I mentioned earlier, Colorado always gives them trouble, but Colorado really has 2 players you got to worry about, where the Stars have 2 or 3 depths of lines that you could change out. And I think really that's what's causing them to win is the depth is coming to fruition.
Well, as more of a night owl, I actually enjoy it because you got live sports on past midnight.
Right,
watching NHL intermission, Paul Bissonnette and company out there. Yeah. So tonight you got 4 games, but Dallas now with a 3-2 series lead. Sens at the Maple Leafs. Toronto looking to close it out up 3-1 and at home. You got the Hurricanes looking to close it out up 3-1 at home against the Devils. That's 6:30, 8:30 on ESPN. Golden Knights and Wild tied 2 apiece, Game 5. And then in the nightcap that Garrett will not be watching, 9 o'clock face-off on TBS. So I imagine I'll see Bissonnette and those guys on there, I think. But, regardless, Oilers and Kings, Game 5, that series tied at 2 apiece. So a lot of hockey on tonight, and two early games, that where if the home team wins, they will move on to the next round in the Hurricanes and the Maple Leafs. Meanwhile, also 4 games tonight in the NBA. Last night had the Rockets fall into the Warriors and had Miami go ahead and just end the season at home, 4-0 sweep at the hands of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who move on to the next round, 138-83, the final score there.
It was 35-8 and at the end of the first quarter.
I think Miami was ready to go home.
Yeah,
They're ready to go.
Wow. I really do hope that Davion Mitchell gets to stay there. I know he's a free agent coming up in Miami. I know the season's over, but it looks like that's that Spo is a guy who can use him, and he can stop bouncing. Everywhere he goes, they like him because of the kind of player he is, but I don't think there's some coaches that know what to do with him.
Because I don't think he's a complete player. Yeah. So it's hard to fix him in just like any sort of puzzle piece into any puzzle. So, I'd be interested to see what happens, but it appeared as though he got a little bit of a career resurgence, I guess you could say, a little injection of some fun and energy with that move to Miami, but their season did end last night. So tonight you got, Pacers looking to close it out up 3-1, hosting the Bucks. Knicks up 3-1, look to close it out against Detroit. Boston up 3-1, look to close it out against Orlando. And then the only series that might not end tonight is the late cap, as you've got Denver and the Clippers 9 o'clock on TNT. So those Turner networks are in overdrive right now between baseball and hockey playoff, or basketball and the hockey playoffs going on right now. So yeah, 8 games between the 2 leagues tonight that you can check out. So happy playoffs, everybody. There's a few things off the radar.
Thank you, Craig. One note, I just saw this on ESPN. Luka Doncic, you hear about this? Is paying for the entire expected cost of restoring the vandalized mural depicting Kobe and Gigi Bryant in downtown L.A. I thought that was a neat note from ESPN and also the NBA.
Yeah, the Lakers in the offseason need to get 4 or make sure they get better defense, but they still could have won the game the other night. But I know that for a while there on Sunday that Nico was like, see, I told you can't play defense.
Yeah. Well, that's 3-1 Minnesota, right? With Anthony Edwards and the T-Wolves. I got one note. Thank you, Craig, for Off the Radar. I mentioned this earlier about the transfer portal. The deadline was late Friday, right? That's when you had to enter if you wanted to transfer during the next few months until school starts in the fall. So I saw this from Matt Zenitz and also from Pete Nakos that Auburn tight end Rico Walker entered the portal. Has entered the portal. So I sent a text. I went, so does that mean it couldn't have been today or yesterday? There's a deadline. They said, no, that means they filed their paperwork and then announced it like in the last day or two or even the next 2 or 3 days. If you see that, that means they have filed their paperwork and they did it before the end of the day on Friday, which makes sense, but that was a little confusing to me. John McClain around the corner, but coming up, there will be a lot of these top 10s of this and that with teams and players and whoever else. And one of them from Greg McElroy, the former Alabama quarterback who now is on ESPN, the top 10 quarterbacks for 2026 that will bring some discussion. And that is around the corner. And this is 365 Sports.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Penny Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Penny Clinic Waco and reach out to the Penny Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Penny to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pennycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Be a lot of the lists, and there were, as soon as the draft was over, you saw a list about 2026. And as soon as the season ended, when Ohio State won the national title, then there's those who make the playoff of the top 25. You'll see a lot of those. This one intrigued me, though, and we'll discuss it a little bit. From On 3, but it was really from Greg McElroy. They wouldn't put the graphic together. Here are, in his opinion, the top 10 quarterbacks for 2026. There will be some names that are not on the list that people will go, oh, my God. But he had a couple of responses to it. But here are the names of the top 10 quarterbacks, according to Greg McElroy. He won a national title at Alabama. Mm-hmm. He's an analyst for ESPN. Doesn't mean he's the all-knowing. But there's Cade Klubnik at the top, a Texas high school player at Clemson, who had a nice ending, ran that offense at Clemson a lot better at the end of the year until they ran into UT. Mateer, the transfer to OU, Levitt, we've talked about him. Even Dane Brugler brought him up. Drew Aller from Penn State. Nussmeier lit up Baylor secondary in the bowl game. Very, very impressive. Carson Beck transferred to Miami. Lenora Sellers, at South Carolina. Sawyer Robertson at Baylor. DJ Lagway, Paul's favorite quarterback, and there's Georgia Tech and Longview native Haynes King.
Actually, the stunning omission is Arch Manning, but if you look at the people on this list, they all have way more starts than Arch Manning does, and I think that's got to be a factor in this for Greg McElroy. I don't know if I would have them in this order, but these are guys, if I'm making a top 10 list, maybe I kick out. I don't know if I kick out Haynes King. I don't know.
I kick out Carson Beck.
I might kick out Carson Beck.
I kick out Drew Aller.
Yeah. So
yeah, he's up there at 4. Yeah,
that's he doing at 4. Yeah, that's where I would start. He's a good player, but I don't think he's proven nearly enough to be the 4th best quarterback in college football. In my opinion, at least. I mean, depends on how you view this. Is this off what they've done? Is it off what they will be? Is it all what's his parameters here?
This is the reason Arch Manning is not on the list was because of the lack of starts, no matter how the potential he has or whatever else and the weapons he'll have and how good we think he might be. This is based on evidence you have up until this point entering the 26th season.
Yeah, so, I mean, that makes sense. And the Arch thing, I mean, that's going to be like Shador at the draft. It's just fascinating, like one way or the other. There are definitely camps that have been formed, but I'm somebody that's just sitting there with my popcorn ready to see how great he is or how, middle of the road he may be, whatever the case is. It's just going to be – it's been 2 years of buildup for this.
Yeah, the expectations are so high you wonder even if he's really, really good, can he –
They've made the national championship tournament last year, and there's people like, well, if Arch had been the quarterback, we would have won the whole damn thing. There's that opinion. So the fact it will be on his shoulders and not like spot duty and all of that, it's just going to be fascinating. So, with that in mind, we could probably sit here and go like, I'd have 6 at 7 and I'd have 8 at 10, but
let's not do that. Let's say who's not on it that should be.
That's not even what jumps out to me. What jumps out to me is Drew Aller, I think, is too high. I think Carson Beck's arguably too high. I think Sawyer Robertson's deservedly getting the respect that I think he is going to earn further this year, but it's good to see because I saw a list that somebody who works for like 247 put out the other day, and Sawyer Robertson wasn't on there, and it was the best Big 12 quarterbacks list, and he wasn't even amongst like the top 10. And that's just, you don't, I don't know. I'm not going to call for, but you don't know what you're talking about. If you don't have Sawyer Robertson as a top 5 quarterback in the Big 12, arguably could be number 1. I mean, you can make a case for that. So to not have him even ahead of most of the league is just insane, quite frankly. So anyways, I'm glad to see him on here. And then I think you could say, well, Lagway should be a step up, but those are the things that jump out to me initially.
All right. Avery Johnson is not on there. That's a name, although I think there's still to be determined with that.
I would put Kevin Jennings on there before I put Avery Johnson.
SMU,
right
okay.
Now.
I saw where Rhett
Lashlee
responded to a list that did not have him included as far as a potential NFL quarterback.
I wouldn't put either one on this top 10 list, but I would put him on there before the other. What'd you say, Paul?
I would put Kevin Jennings on before Avery Johnson.
Yeah, man, if he didn't leave just such a bad taste in everybody's mouth at the end of the year, like that playoff performance was just so bad that I think he'd be viewed a lot differently if he had a better game, but that just left such a bad taste. So, yeah, I could go either way with
Taylon Green, no.
Not top 10.
Not yet.
Lute Altmaier, Illinois.
Not top 10.
Fernando Mendoza, transfer, going to play for that offense at Indiana from Cal.
I don't have a problem him not being on this top 10 list, but I think he's a guy maybe at the end of the year he is on the top 10 list as far as having a great season.
Nico?
No,
Iamaleava?
not right now.
Let's do the hype list. So Nico 1, Arch 1, Nico 2, Jaden Rashada 3. Who am I missing?
Dylan Raiola 4.
Dylan Raiola 4. Yeah. And I didn't mention off the radar. He just signed the deal with Adidas, by the way.
I saw that.
So that's pretty cool.
All right, here's a couple of other names because there's nothing to go with them other than the fact that we know they were highly ranked in Bryce Underwood, Julian Sayin at Ohio State, Dante Moore at Oregon. So there's the list, and there we have and you can debate this. That's what I like about them. I don't like to do too many of them, but I like to debate about them.
Why do you think there's so many of them? It's because when they throw it out there.
It's great fodder.
Yeah. I mean, nobody loves a list like a college football website loves a freaking list, especially in the offseason. So, that's what it's for.
Darian Menza from Duke is getting like $4 million.
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
He's going to have to live up to that. But, again, I'm not putting him on this list. This is about the 10. I think, Drew Aller and Carson Beck are too high. I think Carson Beck, he's fine. He's fine.
I don't think he's any some otherworldly quarterback by any means.
He's not bad, but he's fine. He will be a downgrade from Cam Ward for Miami. How much is the question?
Yes, for sure.
If he's not that much of a downgrade, their offense will still be fine. But yeah, he's fine. Drew Aller, they're fine. He's fine.
I think Drew Aller's a good quarterback. I just don't think he's met the moment and been a guy that's taken it to a different level. I think Penn State benefited from him, but they also benefited from their defense and their running game. And I think he's got something still left to prove to be considered the fourth best quarterback in college football.
But what I can tell you about the other 8 quarterbacks that Greg McElroy has on this list, Klubnik, Mateer, Levitt, Nussmeier, Sellers, Sawyer, DJ, and Haynes, they've met the moment quite a few times compared to Carson Beck and Drew Aller.
What's the difference between, and I'm asking, and I know the turnovers will be the answer here, or one of them. What's the difference between Sawyer Robertson and Josh Hoover?
I think they're pretty.
Because Hoover's.
I'll tell you the biggest difference is that a lot of people that do these lists don't watch that much of the Big 12. I don't think they have the ability to break them down that well, to be perfectly honest with you, as versus doing it for the SEC or the Big 10. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest difference. And I think certainly if you're looking at stats, which is probably what a lot of this exercise is, at least the beginning stages of it, then you look at all the turnovers for Josh Hoover and you go, wow. And like we were talking about that with Sonny Dykes, not all of them were his fault, but a lot of them were. And it wasn't just picks, it was fumbles too. So that dings him to me as somebody who watched him, but I don't know how much of a difference there really is in the big picture. He could be 11 and I'd be like, yeah, sure.
It's always good to have these and then maybe in mid-October bring them out just to kind of see. And then there's 400 of them.
And I want to be clear. I don't think Drew Aller is a bad quarterback the way I'm talking about him, but I just think that there's something. I think that's a fluid spot. I think the top 3 are pretty damn solid. And then after that, I think it gets really interesting. I mean, DJ Lagway might be way too low on this list. He might have him a lot higher. So Lenore Sellers might be too low on this list. Sawyer Robertson could be too low on this list. We'll see. I mean, that's what the fun of next year is going to be is a lot of unknowns when it comes to the quarterback spot, but a lot of interesting names at interesting programs. And, that's you could have Sam Levitt another spot higher if you wanted. I wouldn't argue that, over John Mateer. I mean, there's a lot you could debate on this, which is the whole point, right?
Absolutely. Part of me hopes that DJ Lagway is not on the list at the end of the year, but that's mean and cruel. But if he's going to be higher, I mean, it's just it's one of those things where if they protect him, now he didn't really play in spring because his shoulder was banged up, and his shoulder was banged up because there was free reign on the quarterback last year at Florida, and he made so many different things happen. If they've cleaned that up, and because they've got skill guys came in to play with them. They've got some really impressive skill guys that have upgraded those positions for them. If they can clean up getting him blasted every other play and him having to be miraculous. I mean, the sky's the limit. He is so damn good.
Yeah, I think the fun thing is all these dudes are really good players. I think the ones I'm the lowest on would definitely be Carson Beck. I think that might be it, actually. The one I'm just like, nah, I don't really buy it.
You know what? Carson Beck, like, he is like you really had your mindset on this restaurant, and you got there and there's like an hour wait and you're hungry. So you go to the one next door that has lesser wait. The food's not quite as good, but it's fine. That's what he is.
How about if he's one that you go to a restaurant and you really like the food? And I'm one of those that gets not compulsive, but I'll go to a restaurant, I like a certain dish, and I'll go back a couple of times in a row because he was part of a national championship. Is he that where he was pretty good, the food was good, and then you go back too many times and it's not as good? The expectations have dropped. That's what he could have been.
I just think I heard about how great this meal is, and when I got it, it was fine. It was pretty good. It wasn't as great as everybody made it. It wasn't the best dish I've ever had, like some people were raving about. I think he got the potential to improve the recipe, and I think he can win a lot of games. I'm just not – I don't know. I think they're all really good quarterbacks here, and he could very well be among them. He's the one that I have the most questions about, I think, moving forward is how I would say.
All right. That's good stuff. Thanks for putting that up, Garrett. Thank you very much. Also, Andrew has the two polls. Once we get through Paul and his top five near the end of the hour, we'll have the results from the polls for today. We'll get to that. John McClain, though, Hall of Famer, columnist. He's next. This is 365 Sports.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He keeps me coming back. Cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. Does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy, last name Barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line. This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing his time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us. Most every Tuesday around 5:30 is on with us right now on 365 Sports. And John, thank you very much for your time. Takeaways, there was the drama of Shador and of other stories. What storylines were the ones that you followed the most?
That Baylor had a player drafted, actually, Caleb Lohner, former basketball player, was drafted by Denver. It's amazing to me Baylor hadn't had a player drafted in the last 2 years.
Yep.
One of the
Good.
things I like, all these lists I look at have Sawyer Robertson rated anywhere from 5th to 8th to 10th as a quarterback prospect going into next season. So if he picks up where he left off last year, and hopefully he's healthy so he can run like he was doing before he had, I think it was an ankle injury, we could be hearing Sawyer Robertson's name called a whole lot earlier than we thought when he first got there. And of course, Shedeur Sanders. But I'll say this about Shedeur. It's good that he's gotten away from his daddy. He needs to be as far away from his daddy as he can get. And going to Cleveland, it's pretty obvious. Jimmy Haslam, the owner, made him draft him. You don't sign a quarterback, Joe Flacco, trade for a quarterback, Kenny Pickett, use a third-round pick on Oregon's Dylan Gabriel, have Deshaun Watson still on your roster. Plus take Shedeur Sanders. You could look at head coach Kevin Stefanski and general manager Andrew Berry when he was announced, and they looked like they were being held hostage somewhere in the Middle East. And it's going to be awkward because you hope that Shedeur handled it very well, that he'll go in there, put his head down, keep his mouth shut, get an agent like his brother did besides his dad. And his brother got an agent, Drew Rosenhaus, signed a free agent contract with Tampa Bay. And Dion needs to keep quiet. And when you go back through this whole process, it's like somebody pointed out, Shedeur acted like he was on a recruiting trip and not a business interview. And people talked about how he lacks self-awareness. Hopefully he's learned from this, been humbled by the experience. His dad at one point said, we're going to determine where he plays. Then his dad said, if I was going to coach in the NFL, it'd be where my boys are playing. That turned a lot of people off as well. All the things, even their, VIP section, legendary dollar signs and diamonds, all those things. Hopefully now he will just focus on football off the field. Problem is, he's Shedeur Sanders, and every pass he throws in practice, the media is going to report it. They'll be reporting about him. Not Dylan Gabriel, not Kenny Pickett, not Joe Flacco. This time next year, they may be drafting another quarterback, this time in the first round.
Yeah, John, one of my pet peeves will be coming up here soon is in the open portions of training camp practice when writers like, oh, that's a really nice pass to so-and-so. And you're like, so? What does this mean for the regular season? It doesn't mean anything. John, what did you think of what the Texans did bringing the Iowa State wide receivers in? Ariante Irsay, is the kind of, I guess, the left tackle of the future for them, maybe even of the present if he wins the job. Overall, how did you grade them?
Even though I gave them a B+, I don't give A's to teams that don't have first-round picks. But even though Nick Caserio, the GM, told us multiple times, we never draft for need. Every general manager says that, and then they draft for need at a position. They draft the best athlete at a need position. And that's what the Texans did. They got 2 1,100-yard receivers from a pro-style offense and a head coach, Matt Campbell, who everybody respects. And he gave them, of course, high recommendations. And C.J. Stroud was the happiest player on the roster. And then between them in the second round, Ariante, his name's Tay, and T-A-E is what he goes by. He was Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year. And I watched the tape they put out where he, against Penn State, totally shut down Abdul Carter, one of the 3 superstars in this draft, along with Hunter and Genty. And really, Travis Hunter is the best of them all. But he did a great job. They're not in a rush. They signed a veteran, Cam Robinson. It's amazing how many offensive linemen they have brought in, which is smart because they're admitting they had the problem with their offensive line. And I can't wait to see the way it turns out. You talk about competition, they're going to have a lot of it. So, of course, they're happy. They drafted a USC running back, Woody. I can't remember his last name. It was at Mississippi State before that. And as a sophomore, running back had 83 catches at Mississippi State. And last year he had over 1,100 yards rushing and 47 catches for USC. So he got a chance to make the team and actually help them behind, Damian Pierce is backup running back to Joe Mixon going into the last year of his contract. And he's going to have to prove himself. But I thought overall they had a good draft. I thought the Cowboys had a real good draft. And they asked me today on a podcast I do every week with Mattress Mac, did I think Jerry was involved? And I said no, because they look like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's fair answer there, John. I think that's so cool.
Hold on, Helen, Craig.
Yeah.
I got to tell your daddy this. Jimmy Stanton, the nephew of former Baylor AD Tom Stanton, who works at the University of Oregon, and he was PR guy for the Astros, been a good friend of mine for 25 years. He's in town seeing friends. And their offensive tackle, Connerly, went to the Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hoping that the Texans might get him, but they traded their pick for extra picks. He said that kid is great. He also worked over Abdul Carter. So JT Connerly going in there playing opposite Laramie Tunsil, boy, Jaden Daniels is going to be so happy at the improvement at offensive tackle. So it's a great time for those Redskins fans with the new stadium coming and a great first-round pick and a team that will win the NFC East because Philadelphia won't. It's been, 21 years since there's a repeat champion. And anyway, we know it's not going to be the Cowboys or the Giants. So they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender, David. I know you love that.
I love what it feels like. I'm just nervous because it's been so long. But, yeah, last year was a hellation. A lot of fun. Craig?
Yeah, the stadium mocks look really cool if that's what it turns out to look like. I know they're still deciding on some of the details, but, man, it looks really, really cool, the designs they've shown so far. John, we talked about the Iowa State teammates. I mean, they still got Xavier Hutchinson as well, so they really love Iowa State wide receivers. Kind of what's his status at this point?
Xavier Hutchinson, who had 106 catches his last year at Iowa State, came in and flashed a little as a rookie, as a good special teams player. I thought he would take off last year. He didn't. When he didn't get to play much, when he did, he made catches. Now, maybe in his third season he'll be better, but the fact of the matter is they've got Nico Collins, one spot. They got Christian Kirk in the slot. They got Jalen Noel in the slot. And they got Jaden Higgins wide opposite of Nico Collins. So it's going to be really hard for Xavier Hutchinson to make the team. And if he does, it'll still have to be because of special teams. John Mechie III, who beat leukemia but has had 2 years to play the way they expected when Casario traded back into the second round to take him from Alabama. This is make or break off season and training camp and preseason for him because if he doesn't step up, he'll be gone.
No chance on Tank Dell playing this year, right?
Well, nobody's going to say that, Paul. All the Texans will say is this rehab is coming well, but considering how many operations and how bad the break was, I'll be stunned if they see him this year. I think if they thought they were going to see him this year, they wouldn't have drafted receivers with 2 out of their first 3 picks.
Were you surprised a little bit that they didn't add a change of pace running back? Given the depth in this draft, someone to spell Joe Mixon.
Well, they've got Damian Pierce for that, and then the running back from USC they took in the 4th round. I think he'll have a chance to get in there and win the 3rd job, and then if Pierce is gone after this season, his 4th, then he could step up. And they drafted guys that their new offensive coordinator and play caller, Nick Caley, who came from the Rams. They drafted the kind of players he wanted. And their new offensive line coach, Cole Popovich, that guy's under more pressure than any coach on this team because they really do change offensive line coaches on an average of every other year. And the lack of stability for the offensive line has just been inexcusable.
John, thank you as always, my friend. We appreciate
Thank you, guys. Check 'em Bears.
There you go. John McClain with us on Tuesdays, usually around 5:30 on coming off the NFL draft, obviously, but he always has a nugget or two. And the one, Garrett, Craig, what he said about Washington and is it Connolly, the guy that was drafted out of Oregon, the offensive lineman? Yep. His athleticism is off the charts. And I never realized that. I heard about him. I remember when I did All-American teams or whatever, but I didn't realize the kind of athlete that they feel like they have in the young man from Oregon. When we come back, Paul Catalina has his top 5, and we also will have the final votes. Andrew Valade and his 2 polls we do every day here on 365 Sports.
Overwhelmed by your inbox? Clean Email is here to help. Organize, clean, and manage your emails with powerful automation tools. Say goodbye to spam and clutter and enjoy a stress-free inbox. Try Clean Email today at cleanemail.com. That's CLEAN email.com. Founded in 1910, Samsonite is the world leader in durable, high-quality luggage and travel accessories. Made to the highest standards, our products won't let you down. We give you the confidence to get out there and explore. Inspired by the past, devoted to the present, and built to inspire a multi-generational future, Samsonite is here to elevate your journey. Travel with Samsonite and pack confidence every step of the way. Shop now at shop.samsonite.com. Samsonite.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into the Top 5. Today, things the Cowboys did well in the draft. Number 5, beef up front. Look, when you start with Tyler Booker at guard, you add 2 defensive tackles. Later in the draft, you went and tried to improve your front. That is important because both sides of the ball last year were a little bit lacking. Zach Martin, of course, in his final season, plagued by injuries. That wasn't good. Getting Tyler Booker to step in right away and start pretty much from day one. He's a massive guard and should help Terrence Steele out on the right side. But the defensive tackle position not addressed until later, but 2 guys with a lot of potential. Number 4, Thunder and Lightning. Look, you went and got Phil Moffitt in the 7th, and before that, you got Jaden Blue in the 5th. Now, I don't think either one of them is going to be a starting caliber running back, but I do think that they both actually have a really good chance to make the roster. Jaden Blue is pretty much a lock. Phil Moffitt, it's going to be tougher, but he has a decent shot because when it's talking about 5 yards and in, Phil Moffitt can get you that first down. Absolutely. So
I like that they've added some Thunder and Lightning. We'll talk about what they missed in the draft tomorrow, which is maybe an alpha at running back. But I really like the addition of Jaden Blue. Don't think he's a starter right away, and we'll have to see. I think he's more of a Tony Pollard type, who I know has become kind of a starting running back in the league and started for the Cowboys, but maybe better suited for the change of pace role. Somebody who can come in and really sting the defense with their speed and big play ability. And Phil Moffitt at Clemson was a first down machine. Number 3, they filled immediate needs. They had needs at cornerback. Siobhan Revelle, filled. Pass rusher, filled in the second round with Donovan Ezraruke. Filled the guard need. Filled those needs. Filled the need for a running back like Jaden Blue. They filled immediate needs. Not all of them, but they filled several of them. Number 2, value. They did not reach for picks, which has been something they've done terribly in the past. In the first 3 rounds, they stayed put and took what came to them. Now, you could say Tyler Booker, a guard at 12, a little bit of a reach, but given the fact that Ashton Genty, who is their probably top player on the board, and Tedoroa McMillan, who is their second-rated player on the board, were there, and Tyler Booker was the highest-rated player on their board, they didn't consider it a reach, and the difference between players 10 and 35, 40 was very, very minuscule. And number 1, like I said, they didn't reach. They got value. They didn't make crazy picks. They didn't fall in love with a guy and pick him in a ridiculous spot. That is a big, big deal. And with the value picks, they let things come to them. Just really impressive. They didn't have a 4th-round pick. Didn't like that second year in a row. They didn't do that. But we'll talk about those things tomorrow. This is the top 5. Smokey, send us home.
All right, we will. And after we looked at the polls from today, Andrew Valade every day with a couple of different polls.
He's still getting them right now. Hang on.
All right, we'll do that, by the way. There was one note. I don't want to end on a sad note, but I just wanted to give you an update because we've had Phil Bennett as a weekly guest many times. His brother Jerry, remember, was fighting the good fight back at the end of football season. He passed away yesterday. One of the funniest, one of the most popular coaches I think I've ever coached or ever covered that I know of, the Bennett family, of course. Phil, guests on our show every Monday during football season. He passed away. And he's the one, Paul, when we were driving up to the AFCA Coaches Convention, I may have said this before, who was our source. I'm not supposed to give away sources, but I think I can now, that Phil Bennett was going to join the Baylor football staff. He was the one that I was on the phone with randomly.
Yeah.
But he passed away yesterday morning, and I've been on the phone a couple of times with Phil, and it's obviously going to be a tough time right now, but wanted to pass that along, and our prayers to the Bennett family, if you don't mind. You got it?
Almost.
Okay.
1 second.
All right.
Won
a state championship on the Kyle Field, beat Cuero back in 1986 when he was at Jefferson.
Yeah, I'm going to have to come over there and tell Andrew and his jiu-jitsu what for.
Yeah, this is rather shocking.
I'm not afraid.
I think we ended a little earlier than we normally do with your top 5.
Yeah, a little bit. I went, look, the top 5 topic was 5 good things Cowboys did in the draft. Was I going to write War and Peace about that?
Yeah, I just say.
I mean, it's going to go fast.
Hey, I do have this quote, and then we get to the polls. This is from on the new Williford, the cornerback, who's from a small school at Tennessee Tech. The kind of player he was. I mentioned like a Davion Mitchell type of fight. Competitive, good initial quickness, good man coverage skills, plays outside but could also play in the slot as a nickel, and a lot of college snaps under his belt, plays confident and scrappy. You know who one of the guys representing him is? Carl Reed. Remember, we've had him on the show.
Yeah.
Who has done a lot of stuff with college and high school athletes. What are you watching tonight? I will be background music with one or the other, but the leader is neither. With 49%, pretty overwhelmingly, then NHL, the Stanley Cup playoffs, NBA playoffs, and then a little bit of both.
Well, enjoy Vanderpump Rules or whatever you're going to watch.
Yeah. I sit there and I just watch that screen that when they go to a pause on YouTube TV, I just sit there and I just sit there and stare at it. All right, poll number 2. According to NFL.com, which of the teams had the best 2025 draft haul? This is pretty even. Raiders with their 33%, Giants Ravens. And even though Paul has been pumping up the Cowboys, and they had a nice solid draft, they are at 4.
Yeah, I really do like the Raiders draft. I mean, Ashton Genty, Jack Besh, what they did towards the end of the middle, like they got some good guys. I mean, John Spytek knows what he's doing. Tom Brady, I guess. Just so when Mark Davis dies, since he doesn't have an heir, does that mean that like he can will it to Tom Brady?
It might be in the contract. Who knows?
I don't know. Like, so
there's not some like niece or someone that might.
No,
not?
He has no children. He has no brother. He's an only child.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, that we know about.
Is there a Al Davis' former wife or someone like that still might be a part of it?
No, I mean, like, yeah, no, they're like it's just him. So once it's over, it's over.
All right.
So
okay, then there we are with that. Thank you, Andrew, very much. Thank you to everybody who voted. Love the way to wrap it up, and also that we intermix that in the middle of the show with whatever it might be. Enjoy whatever you watch tonight or not. Tomorrow we're back at 3 here on 365 Sports. Garrett Ross running the mothership. Emery Winter is working on 365 Sports tonight, 10:30 on the CW. And then, of course, Andrew, the silent assassin, the jiu-jitsu king with the polls, and also throwing out. How many views did Tim Brando's short clip get last Friday? 142,000 or something like that. Very nice, Andrew, for popping that up. For Garrett Ross, and as I mentioned, Emery and Andrew, for Craig and Paul, I'm David Smoak. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great night.